everyone, and good evening. Thank you so much for joining in. We're very thrilled to host you all at the second last day of our festival. We just wait for a couple of minutes for everybody to trickle into the webinar room. Of course, we're also streaming live on YouTube, so you can catch all the action there. Just wait for a few minutes and request all attendees to join in and settle down. We'll begin in just a minute. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining in. This is India Science Festival, India's largest virtual celebration of science. We're in our third edition. The festival is online and absolutely free for everybody to attend. We have events for everyone at this festival, something to do for kids, young adults, we have talks, panel discussions, workshops, competitions, contests, demonstrations, and everything at this festival is open to all because we truly believe in science for all. While we would have loved to meet you all in an offline setting and celebrate the wonders of science and tech with you, we have to keep the current situation of the pandemic in mind, because of which we are online. Now, the festival is themed around continuum. We're looking at where we have come from and where we are headed. And our main aim is for this public engagement platform to bring together science and society. So we want to bridge the gap that exists between science and public. And we're doing that via a variety of events at this festival. So before we get started with our session for today, which is going to be a very, very interesting one, we would love to get to know a little bit about our attendees who have so loyally stuck by us for the past few weeks. So I'm going to launch a quick poll on your screens, and if you could tell me the answers, that would be great. The questions are very simple. The first one says, can you tell us a little about yourself? The second one says, what background do you best identify with? And the third question is, have you attended any of our events in the previous years? I'll just wait for a minute for all of our attendees to answer the questions. Of course, very, very keen to get to know more about our attendees so that we can really put forth the best of our events for your benefit. I'd just like you all to know that you're free to drop in your comments and questions relevant to the session and the festival in the Q&A tab, and we're happy to address them towards the end of the sessions. Let's have a look at the poll results now. I'm going to quickly flash the results on your screens. So the results tell me that 59% of our attendees are undergraduate students, 10% are postgraduate students, 14% are faculty members, 14% are professionals in the industry, and 3% belong to business and entrepreneurship, which is very, very interesting. 41% of our attendees are from the engineering background, 31% identify best with life sciences and biological sciences, 3% with science communications, 7% with arts and humanities, 3% with media, and 14% with others. So in the question about have you attended any of our events in the previous years, 10% of our attendees have attended our events, while 90% have said that this is their first ISF event. So on behalf of the entire team at India Science Festival and Fast India, I welcome you all to India Science Festival. We're very, very excited to host you for this session. A quick shout out to the backend moderators, Rupsi, Parth, and Shubh, who have been bringing all the action to you live on our social media handles. I'll request our backend moderators to drop in a few messages in the chats. You'll get to know about the contests and competitions that we're running at the festival. You can follow us on our social media channels. We're live on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And of course, we are also very keen to know what you think about our festival. So please do grab a screenshot of our events, post them live on Twitter, tell us what you think about them, and the best tweets get exciting prizes. And with that, I would like to introduce our speaker for today. Professor Sharda Srinivasan is a professor at the National Institute of Advanced Studies, NIAS in Bangalore. She's received the Padma Shri and has made pioneering contributions to the study of archaeology and history of art from the perspective of exploring engineering applications in these disciplines. This is a very, very wonderful interdisciplinary talk, and it is amazing how the speaker has explored various aspects of science and art and brought them together in their study. And I'm sure that our attendees are very, very curious to know more. So with that, I would request our speaker, Professor Sharda Srinivasan, to kindly take over the dais. Ma'am, request you to turn on your audio and video. Perfect. We can see you clearly. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. It's such a pleasure to host you at India Science Festival, and our attendees would love to get to know more about your work, which is indeed a very, very intriguing subject. This session is called Breaking Barriers and Bringing Together Archaeology, Science, and Dance. So, Professor, over to you. Please take this session.
Thank you so much, Shruti. First of all, let me congratulate you and everybody at ISF. Can you hear me all right? Or,
yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So hearty congratulations on this wonderful job that you're doing, bringing together so many people who are enthusiastic about science and reaching out to students and the broader public and so on. And as science communicators, it's great privilege to be part of this festival, and all the best to you. So today, as Shruti mentioned, I'm talking about some of my own work, which is really quite interdisciplinary, as she pointed out. So I get to hop across, started off as an engineer really, but then I had a lot of deeper interests in art and cultural heritage and dance and so on. And so I found myself drifting towards trying to explore the applications of scientific techniques in art and archaeology. And so I try and take you through some of those aspects. And I should say that my throat is not 100% okay, so please bear with me. But luckily, I think the slides may just as well do a lot of the talking, so you could always read them a bit more closely. So I should now proceed to share my screen. Right, do you see the first slide now?
Yes, all good.
Okay, great, thanks. So what I thought I would really try and touch upon is to explore how the use of metals and materials in antiquity were situated not only in a functional context, but also had the context with respect to spectacle and aesthetics and music and dance and ritual and so on. And as Shruti mentioned, it also had a lot of interest in Bharatanatyam and so on. So this talk does have some of my slides interspersed, but I have to say that this is purely interspersed as creative expressions. So please don't take that dimension very seriously in terms of being connected to the context. So that's just one aspect that probably keeps me, animated as I carry on through the topic. So, well, I think that there is this very fascinating and ancient connection really between materiality and the way materials and metals and stone and so on were being explored in early antiquity, and the responses that emanated out of that in terms of some kind of aesthetic manifestation, what we call art or dance and ritual and so on. And you're looking here at this very interesting menhir type rock in this Neolithic site of Sanganakalu in Karnataka here in southern India, which is dated to about 3000 BC. And if you look here, you can see this line, which looks like a row of dancers holding each other's hands and so on. These are these early manifestations of the desire to connect with the outdoors and the inner spaces through dance and so on. And of course, this is one of my sojourns in the World Heritage Site of Hampi, which is, of course, also known for the temple sculpture. And as we know, there is this connection between dance traditions and the sculptural heritage in India and so on. And that also is a more sophisticated version of these connections between materiality and performance in a way. Sanganakalu is a very fascinating site. As I said, it is a Neolithic site, and it comprises of quite a lot of rock art and so on, which is set amidst these dolerite dikes. This is this vein of dolerite running across the hillside here. And as you can see, this relates to the Neolithic themes like the humped cattle, and there's also some depictions of peacocks and other forms of fauna and such like. And what is really quite unique to these kinds of sites is that if you see these whitish marks, which is you see typically along the edges of the rock. So this rock dolerite is very resonant. It gives off these tonalities when struck. And so these cupules seem to point to places where they were actually striking the rock. And so there was some kind of sense of using it for a musical, acoustic space. There is some video of mine later where you could see on TEDx and so on, so you can hear what the sounds look like. But for instance, you're seeing again this menhir-like rock that I had pointed to in the last slide, and this row of dancers with these linked hands. And this was one of our people we traveled to there, and you can see that the edge of this is also a cupule. So it's very theatrical in a way, combination of this landscape combining materiality and performance. And so we can see that these are some early manifestations of these ideas. And of course, in especially in rural India or in forest uplands and so on, there is still a very much closer connection between performance and the outer space in a more celebratory way. There could be rituals associated with marriage or meeting or other kinds of celebratory events, life events and so on. And this is actually a painting which was done by the Kurumbas, the Arla Kurumba honey gatherers from the Nilgiris in the uplands in the mountains of at the border of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. And you see that this painting has actually been made with pigments which were made from tree resin and herbs and so on. And you see here that it depicts the activities of the Arla Kurumba of honey gathering and so on. So you see these pots of honey, and they're dancing around this stone circle, as it were. So, and of course, these kinds of stone circles were part of the megalithic landscapes in many places in southern India. Of course, in many places they have been bulldozed away and so on, but you still see them intact in the Nilgiris, for instance, and some of the communities, indigenous and local communities living amongst them, as it were. As for instance, this is a hut of the Toda communities, pastoral Toda, as you can see here, the buffalo, the Toda buffalo motif and so on. And there's this set of cairns here. And this is a photograph of some of the Alakurumba dances themselves, which are taken some years ago. And you can see the music that they also make, in fact, evokes very much the natural landscape, and it's almost like the bees humming and things like that. So there was this much closer connection in the past between the outdoors and the landscape of dance and so on. But when we talk about dance and archaeology, I suppose the most well-known Indian artifact from the Indian subcontinent, the greater Indian subcontinent, is what we described as the Mohenjo-daro dancing girl, found in Pakistan, which is dated to about 2500 BCE. And of course, we don't exactly know what the function is, but that's exactly the purpose and the function. A lot of it is still very much in the realm of speculation, but one can see that there are certain aspects which do connect to intangible cultural heritage that survives even into the present day. For instance, you see that she's wearing these bangles which look a bit like what used to be shell bangles and so on, which are worn by some of the local and indigenous communities such as the Rabaris and the Lambadi and so on. And this is also a view from one of the Harappan excavations that I visited at Dholavira in Gujarat. And of course, people who've excavated around the areas have also commented on the confidence and so on of the imagery. And I think it was Zimmer who also suggested that she brought to mind the South Indian sculptures of dancers, or rather of South Indian bronzes, which I'll come to. But as you can see, that hand on the hip is something you also see very typically in the photographs, 19th century photographs of the hereditary Sadir dancers. The Sadir dance tradition was associated with Tanjore in Tamil Nadu, where hereditary female dancers also were ritually attached to temples and so on. So that posture brings to mind that. And if you look at the hair as well, the hair, the hair which is sort of sideways like this, it also recollects to the hairstyle that's used by the Kota women in the Nilgiris, who wear their hair in a bun, which is described as the kolkot, the sideways bun. And as I was pointing out, many of the communities, even the Maria Gons in central India, they also perform these kinds of dances, linking hands and such like. And of course, I put this in purely as a speculation and just for comparison, nothing more, just to point to the fact that, of course, the contemporary Bharatanatyam tradition is one that is derived from the hereditary Sadir dance tradition, and so this pose is, shows how these kinds of repertoires have survived over time in a way. So the continuity between metal and performance, and various forms of human expression and so on. And this is another dancing figurine which is also from IBC and the Harappan context, and again, I just put in a photograph there for a comparison. But one aspect that I'd like to make, and especially since a lot of my talk is about Southern India, is that there are these aspects of continuity, and I'm sure those are sort of discernible elsewhere, but there are, it's interesting to speculate on some of these aspects of continuity, which we do also see with the finds from later finds, of course, from prehistory also in southern India. For instance, this is a Harappan terracotta female, and the site of Adichanur, which is one of the really interesting and enigmatic sites from Tamil Nadu, which is now again being excavated, and some early dates have come from Shiva, for instance, of about 1000 BCE. And this was one of the bronzes which was uncovered by Alexander Ray. This is in the 19th century. And you can see that there are some interesting similarities with the Harappan, the headgear of the mother goddess and the bells and so on. So although of course there was a general hiatus following the Harappan period, there do seem to be strands of continuity in terms of material culture. And this is potsherd from Birana, which is another Harappan site, which also shows this figurine can be interpreted as a dancer. And this is some pottery from Adichanallur of 1000 BCE. And I will be coming back to Adichanallur also in terms of some of the metal finds. And I also just wanted to say that I was also started looking at some of the material culture from Dholavira, which is again a Harappan site, Gujarat, which has just been given the World Heritage status. And you can see here that this is made of dressed limestone, and some of it is also turned and so on. So the stoneworking tradition starts coming into vogue here in Dholavira, although the earlier sites, the other sites in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa and so on are of brick working. And this is some mineralized copper debris which was uncovered from the southern reservoir, which had analyzed, and it shows some processing of copper going on here. And now I come back to, of course, a lot of my work has really been on the South Indian bronzes, which I had also analyzed, and coming back to this theme of the links between archaeology and dance. This is a typical example of the 10th century Chola bronzes, the Parvati images, which again, it's beautifully captures a dance posture, which even as it harks back to what you saw, let's say in the dancing girl, the bhanga and the bent leg and so on, and the way that one hand rests in a very languid way. There are, of course, very close connections with the surviving Bharatanatyam dance traditions derived from Sadir. And it's also interesting that there are these echoes of the intertwinings of, the ideas from the genre of poetry, which we associate with the Tamil Sangam poetics, which is roughly dated to about 300 BCE to 300 CE, where, for instance, Ramanujan has talked about the Agam Puram genres, where Agam relates to the inner space of love poetry, and Puram is the outer space of the bardic poetry, and these kinds of, intertwinings between them, which also bring in a lot of connections with nature and observation of nature. And for example, and why I put in this bronze with the attendant is because a lot of these poems are, as we also see in the contemporary Bharatanatyam tradition, it is about a discussion with the Sakhi or a girlfriend or whatever. And so this goes, what she said to her girlfriend: in his country, summer west wind blows, flute music through bright beetle holes in the waving bamboos. The sweet sound of waterfalls is continuous, dense as drums. The urgent lowing voices of a herd of stags are oboes. The bees on the flowering slopes become lutes. And again, I put this slides of the kurumbas playing on these instruments and this humming bee-like sound, just to point out how the early sounds and early music is also drawn from nature and the sounds of nature. And that's very beautifully illustrated by this poem. Now, coming to the metallurgy, I had undertaken spectrochemical analysis of this image as some others, where you extract a very, very small amount, less than about 50 milligrams or so of sample from a base, and then subject it using a microdrilling process, and then subject it to inductively coupled plasma optical emission spectroscopy. And then this was found to be, of course, a copper alloy with a low amount of tin. And so this was made by the casting process, and I'll take you through some steps of how the bronzes were cast. And this is a technique which is known as the lost wax process. So basically, first an image which is in the shape of the icon to be cast is carved out, and it's very much like carving wood or uh, some kind of material like that. And since of course wax is quite soft, you use all these various wooden and sandalwood spatulae and so on. And also because wax melts a bit on heating, so you use a heated spatula and so on. So the model is built up. And then it is covered with layers of clay, and this investment, which is called the mold, is then heated and the wax is melted out. So that this process of heating the mold, which is a dewaxing process, results in a hollow inside the mold. And that hollow corresponds exactly to the shape of the image to be carved. And then the metal to be cast is poured in this case a copper alloy, and then it solidifies and the mold is broken and the uh, metal icon is retrieved. And so this is of course a process which has been used over generations in the Indian subcontinent. And of course, coming back to the idea of spectacle and ritual and so on, these images were actually used in temple ritual as processional icons, where the metal icons were taken out for processional worship during special festivals. And actually, when they are taken out in procession, they look nothing like what you saw in the earlier picture. This is from a processional worship in Nagamangala in Karnataka, and here, the image has been very elaborately covered with flowers and all sorts of silk and other kind of decorations, and then it's taken, carried around in procession. And the making of these kinds of icons were patronized by particularly the great dynasties in southern India and Tamil Nadu, such as the Cholas. And this is the spectacular Brihadishwara temple of the 11th century, which was consecrated by Rajaraja Chola in 1010 CE, which is dedicated to the worship of Shiva. And of course, here the image in the sanctum is the very large stone lingam or the cosmic pillar, and then the processional images of Shiva and so on are carried around in worship. So that's what the metal icons were intended for. And of course, the early inscriptions also mention that a lot of the queens and the women in the royal elite were also donating lamps and images and so on. And the Nachiar, or the dancers, the temple dancers in attendance, were also attached to the Chola temples, and they also followed the temple processions as they performed and so on. So they also had that role of being part of this whole Melam, as it was called, or this processional festival surrounding this worship of images. It's quite interesting that this is an idea that actually goes back even, seems to be depicted even earlier. This is a limestone frieze from Amravati, which is an Andhra, the Shatavana dynasty of about the early century CE, maybe 1st or 2nd century. And this is, of course, in the Buddhist context, this is a frieze which is associated with the birth of Buddha, and this is the birth of Buddha is linked to the dream of Maya, where she dreams that a white elephant enters her womb and so on. So this in a way depicts Maya's dream, where there's this elephant also seemingly being carried in a procession, and there are all these musicians. There is a person playing a lute over here, and a lot of the postures that you see, again, you can see echoes of it in the contemporary Bharatanatyam or South Indian dance forms, such as the Urdhvajan with the leg lifted and so on that you see, and the Pataka gesture and so on. So it's fascinating to see that some of this is already evident in sculpture of the time. And of course, the Shatavahanas also were a great maritime dynasty who had contact with the Roman world and also Southeast Asia. And there are these cute figures below here as well, the Kinnaras, who are sort of half bird and half human and so on. So a lot of things going on in here. Now, as I was mentioning, a lot of my study has been to do with the spectacular Chola bronzes and South Indian bronzes. I won't touch upon all of it too much, but some of the interesting, aspects. So this is, of course, a very spectacular image of uh, the Hindu god Shiva as Nataraja, or the Lord of Dance. And this is in the Madras Museum. It's from the provenance Kankodvanitavam and dated to about to the earlier part of the 11th century. And so, as I was mentioning, from the analysis that I've done, it was found to have about 8% tin and 8% lead. Now, why these were added is because copper by itself can be quite soft and not very easy to cast. So the addition of the tin and lead actually improved the castability of the bronze. And of course, the art historian come geologist Ananda Kumaraswamy had famously written about the interpretation of the dance of Shiva from Shiva Siddhantic texts of about the 13th century. And he talked about how the drum of creation balances the fire of destruction. And so this balance of cosmic creation and destruction, at least that is one way of interpreting the image. And he beautifully also described it as poetry, but nonetheless science. And Kumaraswamy himself actually was a mineralogist, and so you can see this sensibility in his writing, also beautifully connecting artistic and scientific sensibilities. And it is also an interesting example of combining the anthropomorphic with the geometric and so on, which is also a rather interesting aspect of art and antiquity, but also very much also part of the Indian tradition. For instance, we see a much later example now in the famous Vitruvian Man of Leonardo da Vinci, where it is a two-dimensional depiction here of a human figure within a circle. But already in the 10th century, preceding the Renaissance, you had this idea of this human figure, which was circumscribed within what we also might describe as a Sri Chakra or a six-sided star and so on. So there are all these layers to it. And of course, you can also see that the posture is very much, again, part of the dance tradition. You still see this, the Bharatanatyam tradition, that pose associated with the Nataraja bronze. And what also fascinates me is this hidden geometry that one wouldn't see now, but to make a bronze casting, actually, metal by itself is not very castable. So it would have had all these runners and so on, which would have improved the castability and made the molten metal flow more easily. And then once the casting is finished, all these would have had to have been polished off and so on. So there is all that hidden geometry, which we don't see. And of course, I put this in also to say that, the idea that the dance could be something which is a transcendental activity, something which is quite beautiful. And as Nietzsche himself says, I could only believe in a god that could dance. So it's something which is quite unique to the Indian tradition. I don't think many other traditions have quite made that connection. But when you think about it, it is one of the most elevating activities that a human can do, which is to dance. So now I come to some more of the hard metallurgical aspects, to just point to some of the kinds of alloys that we might encounter in antiquity, and again, how they're also used in aspects of performance and so on. But as I was mentioning, of course, as you can see, this is a old working or an ancient mining site, which is in the region of Agnikundala in Andhra Pradesh. And you can see me there several years ago. And these greenish stains that you see along this old working comes from the fact that there was an old copper lode over here, which has been totally worked out. And then, of course, the copper comes in the ore form of malachite, and that's why it looks greenish with all the malachite stains and so on. But it's all been worked out now. And of course, then the copper would have had to be extracted. And then to cast the bronzes, the copper would have been alloyed with various other metals. And as I was mentioning, many of the South Indian bronzes, the Chola bronzes, are leaded bronzes, as you see here, leaded low-tin bronzes, as we call them, where tin is alloyed to the copper as well as lead. But what is interesting, and this is, of course, what we call a dendritic structure of Ascast bronze. That's why you see these kind of leaf-like dendrites over here from the Ascast structure. Now, as I was mentioning, the South Indian bronzes, the images and so on are primarily low-leaded tin bronzes, which means that the tin content actually does not exceed about 15% tin. And there's a good reason for that, actually. What we're looking at this corner here is what we call a phase diagram, which shows you what happens when you keep alloying one metal to another and at different temperatures. So in this case, tin has been alloyed to copper at increasing temperatures, and that's how this phase diagram has been constructed. So what it does tell you is that around below this amount, about 15% tin, you get the solid solution of tin in copper, which is what the alpha sign stands for. But as you keep adding tin to copper, it actually becomes more and more brittle. So in fact, because of that, in antiquity, you didn't often find the use of bronze, which had very high amounts of tin. But what is quite interesting is that already in the South Indian Iron Age, as we see this vessel from Adichanur, this is actually made of tin with quite a high amount, bronze with quite a high amount of tin, of about 23% tin. And why they were aiming for this 23% tin bronze alloy is that although, of course, the bronze becomes brittle, at that particular composition range, it can be worked to quite a considerable extent. And then it can be it can be worked to quite a large extent, and then it can be quenched, which means like rapidly water cooled, and by that you get the formation of this martensitic needles of beta phase, and also that prevents the embrittling eutectoid phase. And this structure is what they were aiming for, which also explains how this very thin finely wrought vessels were made in the Iron Age early historic period. And of course, most of these crafts of making such vessels have still disappeared. But coming back to the idea of performance, that beta bronze is actually also very, it gives off very good tonalities. And so they were also seeking the same alloy to make musical symbols because it had very good tonalities. And that's also because of the martensite, the needle-like martensite. It contributed to certain resonant properties of the metal. And these days, unfortunately, they're just melting down a lot of the old vessels and so on, because it's quite expensive to alloy copper and tin. And this is in a workshop in Kerala. And then, so they're forging out these symbols from the old vessels, melting them down, and then again, you see the quenching process. And again, you look at the microstructure. And the microstructure is typically when you cut a section of the artifact and then look at it under the optical microscope. And here you can see that it is a two-phase structure. It has the dendritic alpha phase and the martensitic needles. So this is not heavily, it's not forged, but it is a cast and quenched beta bronze with about 23% tin. And as I said, isolating this beta phase, which gave these tonalities and so on. And so this was interesting because also these kind of symbols are also depicted in art. And typically, one of the very interesting figures that you also see in the Chola and early artistic depictions in southern India is of the woman poet saint known as Karaikalammayar. She was a 6th century Tamil woman poet saint. And she's said to have hailed from a merchant family in the coastal town of Karaikal. And so there is also an early and beautiful piece, a bronze in the temple, which is attributed to the Chola queen Sembi and Mahadevi. And you can see here that she's playing the cymbals. And of course, the legend goes that she prayed to be turned into a hag so that she could uh, follow Shiva in his dances in the cremation ground and sing and so on. And so it's a kind of, it was part of this bhakti tradition of worship, which was in a way a sort of a counterculture to the kind of more formal and ritualistic ways of worshipping, where just by the devotion one could attain salvation. And for instance, some of the verses that she wrote in the 6th century quite are still very searing. While at twilight, effortlessly bearing fire in his palm, the beautiful one dances and so on. So, many of her verses are still very animated in that sense. And this is actually a 13th century bronze of Karaikalammayar, which I had analyzed. And this has, it's again a leaded bronze, but it has quite a bit of lead, higher lead than what we saw in the earlier period, almost going up to 20% and so on. And what is really very interesting is that the connection with Southeast Asia, of course, we know of various connections in Southeast Asia and Cambodia, where a lot of the Indian artistic and cultural ideas have gone. For instance, the depictions from in Khmer art, you see the churning of the oceans and so on, which is very prominently portrayed. And you also see the dancing Shiva image moving to Cambodia, though this, in a way, it's modeled a bit more on the dancing Shiva that you see from the Badami region in Karnataka. And it's not the what we saw with the typical lifted leg of Nataraja, but still there are the continuities with other kinds of depictions. And here, astonishingly, is a figure of Karaikalammayar playing the cymbals, who seems to have, for some reason, captured the imagination also in remote Cambodia. And this is from the shrine of Bantisrai. And finally, of course, another point of connection between dance and materiality and bronze and ritual, as I was saying, is to be found in an interesting traditional craft which still survives in Kerala. And this here is a beautiful example of this mirror craft. This is a mirror blank, which is made not of glass, but it's made of metal. And this metal mirror has such a spectacular reflectance, almost like a modern mirror, in fact. And this is made actually of an alloy of about 33% tin bronze. I talked about other compositions of bronze a bit earlier, but the advantage of bronze at about 33% is that there seems to be an isolation, if we go back to that phase diagram, of this delta compound of bronze, which is very bright and silvery, but delta is the culprit in terms of embrittling the bronze. But at the same time, it's very bright and silvery and hard. And so aiming for that delta phase seems to have been deliberate so that they could get this very spectacular mirror composition. And there were methods of casting and isolating this delta in very clever ways, optimizing it, and then polishing the blank very thoroughly so as to get this very good reflective image. And these kinds of traditional mirrors, we certainly see mirrors depicted a lot in Indian art, such as this beautiful example from Belur of a Madanika. Again, his Madanikas are also thought to be representations of dancers and perhaps forms of dancing Mohini. And here she's holding something which looks a lot like one of these mirror blanks which has been polished to give the mirror with this very fine silvery white delta alloy, which has been very well polished. And this is just to point out also that this is another aspect which survives in the dance performance tradition. We're commonly shown depicting the dancer, looking at the mirror and so on. And so these are very many ways in which the sculptural traditions and the artistic traditions and metals and materials and so on seem to be intertwined, which makes it a rewarding exercise in interdisciplinary studies, so to speak. So I think with that, I'll stop sharing my screen.
That was a wonderful session, Professor, and we have enjoyed listening to it and learning so much about antiquity and metals and materials that have been used in the past, and how they just lead and teach us so much about what dance and all the interdisciplinary avenue where all of these are linked together. And I'm sure that the audience members have enjoyed it too, because they've left us quite a few questions that we'd like to ask you now, Professor. So the first one that came up was that, can you please shed some light on the inspiration behind your TED talk that you had conducted earlier about archaeo technology?
Yeah, I don't know if you managed to watch it, but so that actually, as I said, was partly inspired by my visit to some of these sites and looking at, as I said, we know about metals being used as musical instruments and so on. But this is also quite fascinating that the resonant properties of stone were also recognized in performance. So that, again, it actually captures a bit more of Sanganakalu, the site that I talked about in the beginning, and the sounds when you actually try and play that. And then also, the idea with I'm sure many of you are familiar with Hampi, the site of Hampi, and the pillars, which they're again another enigma of ancient art and architecture, which give off these resonant tonalities and so on. And of course, we don't actually know from inscription and so on whether they were actually used or intended to be musical in that way. But certainly, the rock itself, the porphyry granite, gives off, it is very resonant. Even if you go and see some slender parts of it, it is resonant. But obviously, by that time in Hampi, in the 16th century, 15th, 16th century, the craftsmanship was obviously would have been of a level where they could have recognized these properties and tried to, highlight those, or to kind of work towards, generating forms that could optimize those. And that also captured a bit of my exploration into another site, which is Hirebenkal, which is also another megalithic site, which again, it's of the same porphyry granite which you see in Hampi. So you get an idea there how, these slender portions of rocks which were cut very beautifully to make these, the megaliths, these circular capstones, and then the rectangular, parts of the dolmens, then which are all, and these thinner sections. So it shows a lot of skill in quarrying and so on, which was already there in this megalithic period, about 1000 BC. And again, they give off a certain tonality. So I'd visited this site with a lithophonist actually, who had been looking at stones in the Alps, which give off tonalities, Sebastian Sauvage. So we just did this little on-site experimental performance. It was a place which actually seemed very likely like it could have been a performance space, because there was this flat stone, and next to it there was a little broken piece of rock, which was particularly resonant. So I mean, it's an artistic exploration in a way, but this is the kind of liberties you take.
I think that's wonderful, and how you were able to explore yourself at the dance forms in all of these places so wonderfully, and it really showed in the TED talk as well. So thank you, Professor. And another question, because we are streaming this live on YouTube and we have been on social media as well. So a question that we've gotten is that a lot of our audience members are very interested to know about your experience in all of this and your inspiration behind how did you get here? I know that feels like a loaded question, but if you could just tell us about your inspiration.
Yeah. So, as I said, my early training was in engineering and so on. I was in IIT, and because at that time I wanted to emulate my father, who's also a very well-known engineer. And also I was inspired by, of course, the visits to a lot of, power plants and installations, because he was working in the generating of electricity and so on. So, but I guess it was also that I, had been visiting a lot of monuments, and also, in a way, uh, that first power plant that he was setting up in Kalpakam, that was so close to Mahabalipuram, the great Pallava remains. So I used to go there and see these rock cut monuments and so on. So there was always this interest that I had also in cultural heritage and as a dancer and so on. And then, of course, I became to be aware that, you can use, and also speaking of, since the idea of generating power, which, my father, Dr. Masni, used to keep giving me these talks about nuclear fission and chain reactions and so on, and how, the fission of uranium and so on, the chain reaction. So I was quite already aware of, let's say, this uranium thorium geochemistry. And then I came to know also that in archaeology you can use this technique, which was then, when I was using it, it was a bit, let's say, in a developmental stage. Now it's much better established, called lead isotope analysis, where the isotopes of lead, which are again a product of decay, radioactive decay of uranium, thorium, and so on. They can be characteristic of different lead sources because of the fact that the isotopic ratios differ in a measurable way. So I thought, and there was this interest in using this in the study of metal artifacts to actually provenance and identify the sources of metal artifacts and so on. So then I thought that could be a way in which I could combine, my interest in, or rather my background in spectral chemistry and so on, also in terms of studying the archaeological artifacts, and then, the metallurgical study and so on. So I think it's each one's calling, but you can do out of the box things and try and, combine diverse interests. And I think, there's greater scope as we go along, because as the techniques become more sophisticated, our ability to study the past or past materials also becomes more and more what the knowledge that we can gain about how artifacts were made and all that also can be enhanced. For instance, now there's a lot of interest in nanotechnology and nanomaterials and so on. And so, and it's interesting that, of course, it's only after the development of transmission, emission, TEM and so on, the other, that, these kinds of materials, or scanning, tunneling, microscopy, that we're able to identify these, things as nanomaterials, very, very fine structured materials. But then it's interesting to then see that some archaeological materials also have these kinds of nano properties and so on. So these kinds of facets open up, which are quite interesting and challenging as we go along.
I think personally that I find that to be a very interesting journey, and this mesh of all of these disciplines sounds like a very fascinating thing. So thank you, Professor. And another question that we have from someone who's been following your work for quite a while is, so they ask that how closely have you worked with historians and philosophers in your studies, and more importantly, what perspectives do people from those fields bring in?
I think it is a very it is very interdisciplinary. I don't think you can just look at things from a scientific perspective alone and make sense of things, because if a scientist were to look at an artifact and we only look at it from that perspective, there are ways in which you can have some misleading results. I mean, just to give an example, sometimes you may be studying a modern material which you may not know, because I think only a historian would really know what is, what makes sense as a modern artifact or an earlier artifact. And you might find some kinds of minerals or materials which are just not present in earlier times. But as a scientist, you will say, oh, that must have been there in an earlier time. Whereas somebody who knows the artistry, and also you have to also understand the corrosion behavior and so many things. So, the historians would, and for the inscriptional data and so on, the historians would know what is credible in terms of, what could be an early artifact or not. So I think it's very important to work together with historians and to epigraphists and so on. It has to be, it's a collective exercise. You can't just have uh, studies of that nature which don't attempt to integrate with an understanding of the archaeological context. That's when it provides greater meaning and nuance and things like that. So, and scientific work is also not that trivial, as you would know, because on the other hand, you have from the opposite problem, which the historian just thinks, it's so easy. Okay, so fine, how do you date bronzes? Go and date it. It's not at all a trivial matter, because you have to. There are just so many aspects to it. I mean, for instance, metal artifacts. It's not like carbon. It doesn't have carbon, so it can't be carbon dated in that sense. So it's not an absolute dating method. So it is a bit relative. You have to calibrate against metals and materials of the period, and then understand the profiles and the signatures, and even in the analytical process, there are so many minefields. It's all very complicated and time consuming. So I think people should approach it with caution and with understanding that, I think also there's a case for making people who are, let's say, the cultural stakeholders also understand that these are not, things which they need that kind of investment of time and understanding and so on. And I think overall people need to be a lot more cautious and so on, because I just find now that thanks to internet and so on, people are just making such fanciful claims, when it comes to history and this and that and the other and everything, that it's, I think at least in our time, we just had the published data, peer-reviewed material, and also we had this innate sense of caution. But I think that this younger generation needs to really go back to do that and go back to reading the peer-reviewed journal articles and all that. Don't just go by what your WhatsApp forward says, because anyone can write a WhatsApp forward, but a peer-reviewed journal article. And I'm saying this particularly because the Science Festival, yes, there is relevance to scientific rigor, and scientific rigor is not a term that should just be only applied to the scientific field. Scientific rigor also has to be applied to other fields, whether there's humanities or histories or whatever, which is what I think I also try and approach, that we need the scientific rigor in all of these fields, and humanities as well. So that's where I think I come from there. Yeah.
That's really insightful to hear. Thank you, Professor. And building on that, another audience member is asked, so can you tell us a little about your experience working with folk artists in your journey?
Yeah, well, that's a good, very good question. And so, in a way, of course, since I was trying to understand the metal crafts, there's quite a lot of exposure to the metal crafts people, but the folk artists, in a way, and we've in recent times we had a grant which was from IIHRC UK at NIAS, where we looked at, what we call performance at the periphery, the marginalized performers and the folk performers. And one aspect of that marginalization, of course, is to study the actual, instruments and so on, but also some of the folk traditions. I mean, and there is a book of ours, which is also coming up at some point, published in Routledge. And, for instance, some of the forms like the Vilupatu, which is, there's a bow, and then that's used nowadays also in a sort of, some children also perform it in a kind of, and it's like community, like children can sit around this bow and they perform it and so on. But it's really dying out as well. And it was revived a bit in this, the Chennai Tiruvira festival, where also it was used to express some themes concerning ecological concerns and, the concerns about the fly ash in the Ennore Creek, and the children were singing about it and all. So that was an interesting example of using a folk performance tradition also to convey some contemporary concerns. But I think there is a huge need to try and focus more, as you say, on the folk performance traditions and how to preserve them and carry them further and so on. And that's why, as I said, even the Kurumba music and so on, which some of these kinds of things which probably need a lot more serious study and documentation and so on. And another, of course, tradition that I looked at, though, from maybe a metallurgical point of view, is also the use of the sword blades in the Kalaripayattu tradition. But anyway, these are all themes for a lot of talks over here. There's only so much we can cover in one.
You're right, Professor. So just one final question before we wrap up. So, Professor, how was your experience at the India Science Festival, and what is the significance of public engagement platforms like the ISF in bringing credible science to the masses?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think that you know, it's doing a wonderful, providing a wonderful opportunity. And I think in a way, of course, the Corona times have been such a, at one level, very terrible. But the one redeeming aspect maybe has been, this growth of these online platforms, which enables people to reach out to so many kinds of audiences, far and wide, which they wouldn't have done otherwise. And I think also in this sense, as I was talking about the concerns that we have, with the social media kind of phenomenon, which is that at least through these kinds of festivals and these online platforms, there's also a chance to actually hear people who've had some years of experience and expertise in those topics, and especially, in terms of science and scientific temper and engagement, which I think is very, very important. And, because earlier, let's face it, that's the way it is. A lot of media is just obsessed with celebrities and watching their every move. So it wasn't ever that easy for, let's say, somebody from a science background to, an occasional press report if you get some award or something, but to have, to really be seen and, as people who could come into your drawing room and share their ideas and so on. So this has really been a very great aspect that online platforms, and particularly these kinds of festivals like India Science Festival, have done. And I should congratulate you on all the range of international speakers and so on of a very high caliber, and science communicators, and some of us fence sitters as well, and so on, who might otherwise be just sort of talking just to experts and so on, or so on. It's wonderful for us also to have more of a mainstream audience, and that's been wonderful. Thank you.
So thank you, Professor. We have also loved hosting you here at the India Science Festival, and we are sorry that it had to be online this time, but because of the ongoing pandemic situation, that's how it had to be. We would love to have you again sometime next year for our on-ground festivals, hopefully. And it was lovely having you here for our event. So thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you so much, Parth, and all the best to all of you. And it's been a great privilege, and I've enjoyed the questions and discussions as well. So thank you. All the very best to you.
So hello, everyone. Just hang on tight in your seats, because the next session that we have is a very interesting one, and it is in a partnership with our knowledge partners at Impact Science. So I would now like to invite the panelists and the moderator to kindly take the session forward. Can I please request Harini, who is the moderator, to introduce everyone and take the session forward?
Hello, everyone. I'm Harini, and I was also on mute. It's lovely to be with you today and look at this entirely exciting area of research, communication, and promotion. With me is a fantastic panel, and let me quickly introduce them to you. There is Dr. Geeta Vani Rasayam, who is the Rayasam, who is the senior principal scientist with CSIR, who works extensively in this area of innovation, of research, of bringing various groups together. There is Uma Ramakrishnan from NCBS, who is a noted ecologist who works extensively in the area of, obviously, ecology. There is Sarah Haidar Iqbal, can I see Sarah? Who's worked extensively in the area of science communication and strategic communication of science, as well as public engagement. There is Abhishek Goel, who heads Cactus Communication, which has worked for the last 20 plus years in the area of research and research communication. And there is Varun Agarwal, whose brainchild is the India Science Festival. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves very, very quickly so that we can get into the main meat of the discussion. Let's begin. Let's start with Dr. Geeta?
Yeah, hello everyone. I hope I'm audible. Yeah, yeah. So good evening, and firstly, I would like to thank the organizers for having me here today. It's a great place to be, I think, on a Saturday evening, listening to the topic of research communication. So I am Geeta, and currently I'm at CSIR, heading the Science Communication and Dissemination Division. And prior to that, I started out as a basic scientist with a PhD from IISc Bangalore. And then I did my postdoctoral research in France and the US in various aspects. And then I also worked at the industry on drug discovery. And then I've done a variety of things, I think. So I would say my experience is rather broad. And my forays into science communication is relatively recent compared to many of the people over here. So I would like to share my views and also hear from the rest of you. Yeah, thank you.
Uma?
Hi, Harini, and hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me here. My name is Uma Ramakrishnan, and I've been a practicing scientist for about 15 or 20 years. I work on wildlife, and I use genetics as a tool to study biodiversity in India. And given that what I study, biodiversity, is something which affects us all, the loss of biodiversity, climate changes in climate, and interactions between those two factors are changing our lives on a daily basis. I became or ended up doing a lot of communication because all of you are the stakeholders of the research that we do. And so I'm a scientist, but I love talking about not just what I've done, but what science in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Abhishek?
Thank you, Harini. Yeah, excited to be here. I'm Abhishek Goyal. My interest in research communication started about 20 years ago when I was in Japan on an exchange program. And realizing that Japanese scientists are brilliant, but because the language of communication globally, science communication globally is English, they would struggle to get their science across and get published. So that's how the journey started. But over the years, I've started to become extremely passionate about science communication. I feel a lot of information is in silos, and a lot of different stakeholders could benefit from science communication. So extremely passionate about it. And yeah, I think we are moving in the right direction globally. But yeah, happy, excited to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Varun?
Hi everyone. Nice to be a part of this panel. I'm basically an entrepreneur, so I ran for the longest time a company called Aspiring Minds, which I sold a couple of years back. But while running the company, I became extremely passionate about the research ecosystem in the country, and with the view that India doesn't do as well in research as it should. If you look at the other parameters and the journey which the nation is at, be it the size of economy, the size of the startup ecosystem, and all the other things and our aspirations. So that led me to write a book, which now came many years back, which was on the research ecosystem in the country. And that's how the journey started. So since then ISF was born, and happy to talk a little more about it later. But it's both a platform to bring all the actors together, diverse actors together, but also create public engagement of science and take it to the youth, right? And together with it, we also recently founded a foundation called Foundation for Advancing Science and Technology, FAST, which would look at various aspects of the research ecosystem. So my broader interest is how does India build its research ecosystem and become one of the top nations in research? And I think science communication is an extremely important part of it.
So I'm going to start off from what you said just now, Varun. You use the term science communication, and we use the term research communication. And often we use these two terms interchangeably. So let me start with Dr. Geeta on this. Are they the same? If they're not the same, what is the difference?
Yeah, I think that's a kind of catch-22 situation, I would say, because to me, probably they both are interlinked. So there is no way that you could have them separate, because without research, that's what leads to the science. But in a generic way, if I look at it, when I generally hear the word research communication, what comes to me is what's going on in the lab or what is being published in so-called peer-reviewed publications. That's some kind of a research, I would think. And whereas when you say science, it's a much more generic term in the sense that which a common man would understand. Okay, this is my interpretation. It's not that this is the only interpretation. But I think when you talk about science, like when you're studying in school, you have a subject called science, not research. But when you talk of research, it's more at the maybe, master's and the research level. So to me, research communication is something actually the experimentation which is going on and the outcomes of that. Whereas science is something much more general, the big picture that emerges out of the research. I would interpret that way. And of course, as I said, they're interlinked. There's no way that you can separate one from the other.
What are your views on this? Because you definitely said you got interested in research communication. Is that different from science communication? If so, how?
Varun or?
No, Abhishek.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. Yes, I think I largely agree with Dr. Geeta. So research communication is more specialist to specialist communication. It's meant for narrower audiences is the way I see it. And science communication is taking the research that's published in scientific journals and making it more accessible, more understandable to broader audiences. And broader audiences could include policymakers, could include media, journalists, because a lot of the reporting that we see is often done based on the complex research that's published. And what if there was a better form that was more accessible by journalists, and we would probably have better reportage of science. But it doesn't stop there, right? It's also patients, it's caregivers, it's businesses. So all these different segments is the way I would tag science communication, students included.
Dr. Omar, taking this forward from there, we were speaking earlier in the pre-panel meeting about science communication and research communication also being aimed at peers in other areas. So would there be a part of, would that be science communication? Would that be research communication? Is that classification even important?
So I think, thanks for that question. I think, there's a much broader ecosystem in general. For example, we didn't discuss popular science. The history, a lot of, the older history of science communication has also involved a lot of kind of famous popular science communicators, and books about popular science, which a lot of people use. And as far as the difference, also between research communication and science communication, I think it's really difficult, because even if you're, say, writing a paper, which you would very strictly classify as research communication, you're communicating exactly your research findings in a paper which is going to be peer reviewed. There is no harm in writing that paper such that it is accessible to all, right? Of course, it so happens that the language of scientific publications tends to be very brief. So there's quite a bit of difference in language. And that's something which I think in India, at least a lot of students I've interacted with, we all struggle with, because the way we grew up writing could be sometimes different from the style of writing. But that is, again, a general thing about whether you're writing, some like a critical review of a book or, a paper and so on. So that said, I guess what I was trying to say, I didn't say it very clearly, is that the culture of engaging with science, whether it is popular science content by the general public and scientists, has to expand, right? So, even scientists are becoming much more specialized, and science has become very professionalized now in India. It's like a profession. So, you go in, you publish your papers, but that does not necessarily mean you read popular science in astronomy if you're a biologist. Okay. So I think that broader culture of, engaging with science, engaging with scientific content is something which really needs to be across the spectrum. And whether it is a popular book, a newspaper article, or a research paper, I think better communication of whatever the level of content is something really important. Even if you're communicating to other scientists, to the public, there's probably ways to do that. I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think, like when we write our papers, I always try to make it that even if someone, a manager, someone IFS for his department, or someone who's just interested in tigers, for example, we work on tigers, they pick it up, they should be able to understand at least much of it. So even things like figures, right? I'm kind of obsessive about them. They have to be visual. Visual is basically all, we all look for visual stuff, right? So that figure should communicate everything. And so if someone just reads the figure, just reads the legend, just reads the first paragraph. So I think that's something which we all need a lot of training in. With a lot of practice, it does come. But I think it's also a culture of wanting to communicate versus put down the facts. I don't know whether that makes sense.
It makes absolute sense. I mean, it's the way we learn history also. So if we learn about any king, they're reduced to the 10 important dates in their life. You don't get what they have done. You just get born on this day, married on this day, went to war on this day, died on this day. I mean, like, so what? So I think you are absolutely right. It's the way we, I think, communicate in education and in research in general. And Varun, I'm going to come to you with this same question, but I'm going to add on a question to this, which is this, that after you talk about the difference between them, if you can just spend because you talked about your passion about the Indian research ecosystem and the fact that we can do a lot more. Let's start with you on talking about the tangible and the intangible benefits of research promotion and communication.
Sure, Harini. So yeah, so just building, and I couldn't agree more to Uma, right? I think to me, it seems that we should not create these barriers between research and science communication. They are breaking down, and we need to see science is done very differently now than it was done before, where there was this scientific community sitting in their labs and doing it, right? It's way more broader. The industry is involved, scientists are involved, even citizen scientists are involved, and so on. And we need to make science very, very accessible. And like I did my master's at MIT, and the joke we used to say is that it is 20% good work, 80% packaging, right? That was the amount of time which was spent on how to just communicate the result. And as Uma was saying that, and there's another interesting thing I can tell you, right? Which I realized India versus USA, right? So when I was in my undergrad college, if there's a talk and people don't understand the talk, they'll say, what a great talk. I couldn't understand 60, 70% of it. Such a hi-fi talk, right? And if you go to the US and if you're sitting in an MIT or Stanford, it's like the last person sitting in the room should understand what is being communicated. And that's what makes it a good talk, right? So I think that emphasis on packaging the work, being able to communicate it, and communicate it not only to your peers, but to the public, to industry, everyone. It's a research should be a joint effort, right? So I think that barrier should be broken, and we should see it, to the point Uma was making was very good, that even if you are writing a paper, it should be such that a non-expert can understand it, right? So I think we need to break barriers there. On the tangible and intangible of research communication, I have 3 points to say, but I'll go rather quickly on them. See, the first thing we need to understand is building up upon what I already said, that research thrives in an ecosystem, right? It is, there's money which comes in to do research, and we should never forget, you need money to do research, and there's someone's pocket from which that money is going, be it, mostly it's from the taxpayer. We want more industry to give that money. And the output which comes is public goods in shape of papers, right? But it's just public goods, right? So how do you really connect it back to the money which came in, right? And that's where you need communication. You need communication both for translation, which is that industry picks up and translates these ideas, and then those industries fund research back. It is also communication to the taxpayer so that you can make a case for more money into science. So I think the first important piece is that to understand science works in an ecosystem, and communication is a very important part of that ecosystem. The second is that it helps you do better research, right? One of the things, again, criticism of Indian science is that we work on derivative questions. The big questions are asked somewhere else, people write a solution to it, then we improve that solution and tinker with it, right? And Mashelkar says that there are only two people remembered in science, who ask the question and who finally answer it. All the ones in between are forgotten, right? So research communication, and that's where we need to understand it's a two-way communication, is helping get questions from society, from industry, and so on. And that it has to be seen as a dialogue, right? And the third one, which Harini, we can probably talk a little more later, because is about the scientific temperament, bringing that scientific temperament to people, which is, Sarah, who recently wrote a concept note, it's in the constitution of the country, right? That they should be, scientific temperament should be promoted to public. So it's enshrined in the national objectives. So if you see all of those three, I think science communication is extremely, it's indispensable. If we don't do it well, the ecosystem collapses.
Actually, going to bounce this question to Dr. Geeta, especially given the fact that you work towards building these links and building these pathways. How does this help translate research?
Yeah, no, I think again, when you say translate research, it has wide meanings, right? When you talk of translational research, and somebody was talking talk of clinical trials. I'll give you just an example. If you have to do clinical trials, it's the public at large or the patients at large who are involved in this so-called translation of the research you do. So there's a public plays a very important role. So if you do not communicate, and many oftentimes we see that, people don't want to take the vaccine, or people don't want to take a particular drug, or overdosing, or there are places where they don't want to take part in the trials because they are worried. So for example, in these places, just giving an example, you have to communicate to them the science that is going on or the question that is being asked, and they should take an informed decision, for example, and their communication plays a very vital role. And as my previous panelists, and when you're working with industry, it's the same thing. If you want to translate a particular finding, the industry speaks maybe a different kind of a language, and researchers speak a different kind of language. And many times it's lost in the translation, what is thought. Again, there you need to reach out to the industry and see what is the facet of the research that's going to benefit. So I think you have a variety of stakeholders. And again, when you're speaking to them, the communication should be different. Again, one of the other things is, you tailor make the communications versus a public versus industry versus a patient. So I think another point which I would like to highlight here is when you're talking communication, it's not like a one solution fits all. See, that's very often the case that we assume that, okay, I have written something and now this I can just share it with different stakeholders, but it doesn't work that way. I think you have to personalize it, tweak it, because the level of the starting point is not the same for an industry or for a clinical trial or for a parliamentarian when you're presenting. So I think that's what I think. And so with translation, and I think my previous speaker said, it's indispensable. I think science communication is indispensable if you have to really build the scientific temperament in the country, and the pandemic has really shown how important it is for us to have science communication. I think there's no better example than fighting this fake news and all those which is there, which is not science-based. And this is really highlighting the need for the science communication.
Absolutely, and I think that when at least when we communicate to different stakeholders, it's completely different benefits that are highlighted. So, for example, a policymaker would get the same research from the point of view of policy and implementation at a local level. A researcher may get a different kind of a take on that, and the general public may get a larger picture because they may not understand the absolute implication of the research the way it's written right now. So, Dr. Uma, I wanted to bring this up with you because of the area you work in, which is tigers. How do you communicate this to policymakers and local communities?
So I have a slightly, I hope this doesn't sound negative, but I think it's hard for scientists to do everything. And I really think that, while there may be this ideal scientist who does like cutting edge science, Varun, you mentioned derivative questions, it's very hard to not ask derivative questions because all of our lives we've been culturally, conditioned to be conservative. I mean, I'm sorry, but Indian cultural, this one is to like not ask questions, just keep going, like do what don't step out of the box too much. And I think that asking those kinds of big questions requires a boldness, requires a freedom, which especially our young people, really, it's very hard for them to kind of step onto those, outside their comfort zones to do that. I don't think we are, giving them that platform to really fly. There's very few places which do that in India. Maybe, I don't know whether that's a bad thing to say, but that's my opinion, and it may be wrong. So I guess that, I think it's wonderful to talk about communicating, and a lot of scientists, I think, naively feel, oh, we are going to do science. It's going to produce evidence, and this evidence is going to change policy. It's not that easy. It's not that easy at all. And I think we should really work in teams. We need to work to better, and this is my experience, maybe completely a unique one. I have tried a lot of engagement with, government, with, forest departments, for example, policy makers. And I think that actually, I think it would be good to understand in depth the psychology needed for communication, right? What is the other person looking for? Most of the time, when we go to these venues to communicate, we have an agenda. We want to communicate something, and we want someone to see something our way. I think that engagement has to be much beyond that agenda-driven interaction, and people have to somehow trust each other. And there has to be a lot more communication. I feel like a lot of, science communication happening is promotional. I don't necessarily think that's the best way to approach it. I think there has to be a lot more dialogue. There aren't a lot of spaces for that dialogue. It's wonderful to be in this conference, for example. That's one venue. But I think the dialogue between, there has to be much more dialogue. So I don't know whether that sounds negative, but I think we need a real rethink. And, scientists tend to be like teachers, sort of, because they're used to teaching. But that approach may not work at all in many fora. And so I think as scientists, we need some training, and we need to work with people who really know how to communicate. So that's my perspective.
That's very interesting, because there was something that I was reading about the EU Horizon framework, where they made responsible research and innovation communication a core part of their funding, which means that at every stage of your research, you are involving stakeholders. It could be, and especially true in, let's say, life sciences, especially true maybe in humanities, which means that you're going back to the community asking questions. So if you're looking at diet, you have a whole bunch of communities that you're talking to, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to come on to this with the next question, coupled with the last one, Abhishek, which is this, that when we look at the tangible and intangible benefits, is one of them the inclusion of diversity, the inclusion. And when I say diversity, it's not just different looking people and different sounding people, but also diversity in terms of ideas.
Yeah, so I think I'll touch upon both of these, and I'll just address a little bit what Dr. Uma spoke about. I agree fully that institutions need to provide more support through training, as well as through doing some stuff for researchers, right? It needs to be a mix of both. Because I think researchers are currently overburdened in many ways, including small bureaucratic processes that they need to follow, which we should really free them of. So agree that institutions need to do more. However, I think where I agree with what the former part of what you said is that researchers need to think of their role a little differently as well, which you spoke about very clearly earlier, right? That each figure needs to communicate something. The first part of the paper, if someone's just reading that needs to communicate something, which is a mix of training, but it's also a mix of orientation. And often because researchers have been told that they just need to get published, or they just need to do this thing. They don't think of their work beyond that. We've spoken to many researchers, and many researchers feel that no one else cares about their science. So even if they communicate, what is the point of communicating their science? No one else understands it, no one else cares about it, and it's too narrow, it's too specific to them. And I think that's where perhaps a little bit of the diversity will come in. So we notice this in companies. Let me just take an example of companies, right? So we have a team in Cactus that does deep tech, that does machine learning, artificial intelligence. Now, when the team is working on stuff, natural language processing, they are working and they're really excited and they're working in it. But unless they interact with someone from product, someone from marketing, someone from the business, they are unable to think beyond what they're working on. So, Harini, linking to the diversity point that you were saying, right? I think companies, there's a natural ecosystem of diversity that gets established in companies, because companies are responsible for taking things to market. And if customers don't accept those things, then companies are out of business. In the research ecosystem, right now, the unfortunate goal has become just to get published. And if we expand the horizons a little broader, and if researchers were willing to participate more often, and I think we see the younger crop of researchers doing that more and more often, right? They are talking about their research on social media, they are interacting with others. And I think that diversity will help them do their research better. Because often when you are thinking of the problem alone, you're thinking that, hey, this problem can only be solved in this particular way. And diversity doesn't need to be just other stakeholders. Diversity is also often international diversity. Because sometimes you're looking at a problem within the Indian context in a particular way, and someone else has either solved that problem in a different way or has approached it differently somewhere else. So I think that is where the diversity point. But I want to just touch upon something that Varun also spoke about, intangible, intangible, and I found that interesting. So he referred to funding by industry, so when research is communicated well, today things are starting to change, but still Indian industry largely doesn't believe that great research is happening in India. Unless research is communicated to industry, industry is not going to put money into research. We see countries, we see the US, Japan, many other countries globally. There's a lot of industry money that goes into the universities for funding research. Indian industry money goes into generally what we understand as CSR, goes into a lot of education, but seldom goes into research. So if research is communicated more actively, Indian industry will also see that, hey, there's great research happening in India. I should probably be funding it, research in India as well. So yeah, those were a couple of points.
Dr. Uma, we were speaking briefly about diversity earlier and inclusion and how research communication, research promotion can help. What are your views on this? You're on mute. Dr. Uma?
Oh, sorry. I missed that. I was looking at the questions. I'm sorry. Could you just repeat, Harini? What are my views on?
Diversity and inclusion and the entire space of research, promoting research.
Absolutely. I guess, again, my limited experience as a science practitioner, I found, we were discussing earlier about bigger ideas. And, the best part about being a scientist is really working with the early career researchers and really watching them, from that initial space of fear of, oh, can I do this? Because when you start a research career, you think research, something completely new, which no one has ever done before in the world. How can me, small little me, ever do something like that? It feels like that, and then slowly as you keep, growing in that journey, you just explode with ideas and, and I think that really comes from a place of diversity. Without diversity, you're just making clones of yourself and others. And that's one of the problems with the research ecosystem in India. It's kind of small, and we don't have, because there are so many filters and barriers to a lot of different kinds of people, it is much easier for a certain segment of society to end up going into research, so we kind of end up with uniformity. And that is also a reason for this derivative or certain types of science which happen. So I think that I think that I'm sure that if we can have all kinds of people participating, we can really fly. And in terms of questions too, I mean, the reason that I also, for example, love to communicate science is because the questions you get will make you think. And how can you have to be transparent, right? You have to be able to communicate and ask those questions of yourself. So I think that's, no question about it. Creative enterprises, diversity is just the way to explode creatively.
Dr. Geeta, I'm going to ask you this question next, which is this, that how do you break down these silos that encourage diversity? That's the first part of the question. The second part is this, that how do you get more and more influences from the outside coming in?
Yeah, so I think diversity, as you said, like all the previous panelists said, diversity is essential. And I think it goes without saying, almost it's a no-brainer, I think, diversity. It could be could be multiple ways, like somebody said, international. And even within India, like, if you look at diversity, many of our regional languages or the rural sector, they're not involved in the research or in the science communication. It's very poor. So where is the diversity? It's mostly in English. We are doing the science communication. So we are missing out on the diversity component over there. And even for research, there are huge silos. I'm a life scientist. I stick to my own science. I don't speak to a physicist and now that science is multidisciplinary, we all know that you need every kind of tool and every kind of thought, and there are huge silos. And again, it's only through engagement. And I think one of the pandemic thing has been this online collaborative platforms where people can talk more, interact more. To some extent, that is also a facilitator, I would think, because otherwise we all would stick to our own busy schedules. But I think, again, dialogue is essential. I know of in the US, there were some experiments forcing researchers to work together in the same space, a physicist and a biologist, physically co-locating them and trying to say, now you work and, together. Literally, some experiments have been done like that. I think that's another extreme, but I think definitely diversity, science communication is another great example. And I think earlier in the discussion, we talked about if I'm a life science scientist, for me, even a physics paper is beyond my comprehension, although I'm a scientist. So getting diversity, I think science communication could be a tool where we can foster this diversity of collaborations, because I don't understand what the other researcher is doing. And until I understand, how am I going to even, talk to that person or engage in a collaboration? So I think one of these ways is having this kind of dialogues or, a laymanish versions of those papers or talks. At least other person can understand and contribute. And many times is this out of the box questions which come really stimulate a new way of research or a new idea. And I think so that's where we need to go more and more. And the last point I wanted to say is, when you're talking of diversity also should encourage, when the criticism, we are not open to criticism. When you talk to more people, you should be ready to take the criticism of your research. That I think our culture doesn't encourage that, because it's not seen as, right to criticize. But when you work in the US or in the Western countries, you can criticize no matter what the research. You're not criticizing the person, but it's the research. And I think that's where that also adds a component of diversity to the research. More the people look at the data, maybe you get better ideas. The criticism may really work for your benefit. So I think we need to bring in this culture. It's not going to be overnight. I think it's a slow process. And as somebody said, it's a whole ecosystem which we have to build together. That's what I would like to, say.
I would like to take off from there and pop the next question to you, which is this, that in our quest for being conservative, or in our quest not to go too much out of the box, are we kind of stifling new ideas? And therefore, how does research promotion or research communication or a combination of the two help bring new ideas to the market?
Sure. So yeah, Harini, let me take those two questions together. And to Uma's earlier point, right, that we expect scientists to do everything. I totally agree, right? And the the point in case is that, again, if you look at foreign universities, they have very well developed science communications offices within the universities with dedicated staff. And those staff sometimes run in 30, 40, 50 people who are just helping and working with scientists to do it. And I'll go as far as that, one should use help of private players like Abhishek's company. And Indian universities have traditionally been, worried about working with private players, which is another barrier which needs to be broken, if we really need to proceed. In businesses, it's very clear that, you keep your core services inside and then you work with various people to help you in a lot of support services. And that's how it should be looked at. Hari, just mixing both your questions together, right? Like the other lens to see diversity is, and this was a little bit how the ISF program is built, right? That you see how science interacts with policy, how science interacts with art, how science interacts with history. In fact, just the previous talk, just before we came in here, was someone who was connecting archaeology and science, and there was a talk like that. So bringing these topics together is something which, again, is a part of diversity and creates that interdisciplinary communication. And in fact, gets people from other disciplines to think about this, right? Again, if you look at the research around crowdsourcing, there's evidence that when people of a different field think about a problem in another field, the chances of solving long-standing problems get solved increases, right? And that's why there's so many crowdsourcing initiatives which happen. And to add to that, I would say it's also interestingly to see that there can be very diverse forms of and channels of communication science, right? Like we've in India Science Fest itself, what we did last weekend was that we got a comedian and two scientists come together to do a quiz, science quiz, right? Like that's breaking barriers. Right? You're going to a new community who's probably this comedian's followers and trying to bring them in science fold. Can we do OTT content? All youngsters are hooked on OTT content, right? And as outlandish as that idea might sound, one could make maybe go to the 5 IITs. And again, this might sound elitist, but go to the 5 IITs, pick one lab where you can tell an interesting story of an innovation which has happened in the last over the last 5 years, or go to 5 IITs, 5 IISERs, and so on. And so I think we need that science communication has to be thought of way more differently and openly, right? Again, if you see Western countries, there are science shows which are main primetime shows which are there on TV, right? If you look at science books written by scientists in India for public, they are far and fewer as compared to Western countries. So if you ask me, we are almost maybe a little higher than zero on where the science com effort in the country is. And I can be very critical. Uma has been, worried when she's critical, but I'm sitting outside the ecosystem in some way, so I can be more critical. Jumping to your, second point on, I think we should not stifle research at all, right? And we need to be creative where India is at. We need to see. I mean, there's one interesting idea on how do countries move ahead in research and become. And one of the things is, which you also understand in business, is differentiation. You play on your strengths. Every country has some intrinsic strengths, right? Like China is these days saying our intrinsic strength is data. In USA, data is highly regulated. Our data is unregulated, so we can do a lot more in AI, right? So every country has data. Is also, by the way, much cheaper to collect in India, right? That can become an intrinsic strength for a country to move ahead in certain areas, right? For example, the multiracial environment in India could be another strength if you're doing some certain kinds of healthcare research. So if we connect and have this connection with science communication creates, we'll find areas where we can be differentiated. I'll just give one example and square what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure if many people have heard about this individual, Dr. Abhay Bang, right? Who wrote this paper, which became one of the most cited papers in Lancet. I think that's a classic example of science communication and finding original questions. So what Abhay Bang says is that he was in Gadchiroli, and he converted Gadchiroli into a lab, which is in Madhya Pradesh. But the interesting thing is that the first question he was working on was that he was trying to see some mineral or vitamin content in the blood of people and saying, hey, this is low. What should we do about it? And he did some research on it. After 1-2 years, he published it and he said, this is the problem. Then he went to the people there and said, that's why your vitamin is low. Then we don't care about vitamin. Why are you doing vitamin research? What do you care about? That we care about our babies die in the first 3 months. That's what we really care about. So can you do something about that? And then Abe Bang did this huge study, almost making this multi-year longitudinal study to say what changes you can do in early years of baby coming out and in healthcare of that in a community way, which solves that problem. And that became one of the most cited papers in Lancet. That's not only adopted by the Indian government, but those practices have been adopted by multiple governments in developing countries. This is the idea of that dialogue, right? So the first thing what Abe Bang was doing was he was just doing one-way communication. I am doing this, go and tell them. And when he converted into a dialogue, not only did he solve a problem which has policy implications, it's one of the most cited papers in Lancet. So I think that is the example which shows how it can, do get out original questions and do creative research if that dialogue starts happening.
Thank you, Varun. I'm going to take off from what you and Dr. Geeta said. Dr. Geeta said a line which said that science communication is only in English. And you talked about Dr. Bang talking to tribals in Gadchiroli and understanding the fundamental questions that they needed scientific answers for. In a way, they were co-creators of the research. There was something else I was working on, and I figured that the Chinese Nobel Prize winner, Tu Youyou, she figured out the reasons for malaria and how to combat it by looking at traditional Chinese medicine texts, obviously in Chinese. Now, I think the question I want to come to you, Abhishek, with is so many languages, so much knowledge, so much. How do you bring this together? How do you make sure that there is that exchange of ideas of without language being a barrier in today's day and age? And just one point here, one of the things that I realized when I was doing research was that Einstein wrote in German and Marie Curie published in French. So English publication is like 1960s, okay, predominance of English publication. So I'm just going to leave that with you as a question.
Yep. So I think we get confused because we think of language. We have to focus on what I think Varun referred to earlier, or Harini, you also referred to, is building scientific temperament. So it doesn't matter what language one speaks. If scientific temperament is built, then the ability to ask questions, the ability to, so curiosity leads to asking questions and leads to the process of finding the answers. And I think that's where we go wrong. Again, I'll go back to my Japan experience, right? That was when my eyes truly opened up. It's common to assume that, okay, because one doesn't speak English, in India, it's common to assume, unfortunately, that because one doesn't speak English, they may not be able to do ABC things. But you go to a country like Japan, everything's happening in Japanese, right? And they are the world's leading countries in technology and in many spheres, right? So I think if we take away the focus on language, but focus on building scientific temperament, and that's what I think a country like a Japan does well. That's what maybe a Germany has done well. So how do we build scientific temperament? Because then we'll find research, then we'll find problems being solved in various places around the world, right? In various places across India. So I think that is where I would actually redirect that question to, rather than focusing on the language question. Now, with regards to science communication, of course, a lot more can be done in making science available in various languages or popularizing science, getting children across India excited about science. But I think scientific temperament is what we need to focus on. You touched upon traditional Chinese medicine is what the Chinese Nobel Prize winner accessed to work on malaria, right? And Indian Ayurveda unfortunately gets a bad rap because we don't use scientific temperament, right? Most of the research we publish, I don't know if I should be saying this, but most of the research we publish has not been, we don't respect the scientific technique of doing the research, right? We need to respect the scientific technique. It can be published in any language. We need to respect the scientific technique. Even in Japan, some of the Nobel Prize winners have not published in English. They published in Japanese. That Japanese research was translated into English, read by someone else, and something was built on that, and then that became really big and very well cited. But the source of that research was a Japanese researcher, was published only in Japanese. So I think the scientific temperament is what we need to focus on building.
Dr. Umar, it comes back to what you were saying at the top of the show, which is the fact that we are taught to be conservative and we are taught not to ask questions. So this entire space, what would you say?
I mean, I don't want to sound pessimistic. I think that to me, science is about curiosity and wonder. It's about asking questions of the world around you. And every child, every human has this curiosity. And, you know, everyone naturally loves animals, asks about the sky. You know, it's just very inherent. It's very natural. And the socialization kind of beats it out of you somehow. That curiosity and that wonder. And this probably sounds very idealistic, but somehow we need to sustain that. And I don't think that is something which, children in Gachiroli don't have, or children outside of Ranthambore, wherever, don't have. They all do. But many get much fewer opportunities to express those questions, to get answers to those questions. And those questions are just suppressed and life takes over. So if there is a way to really engage that childlike curiosity and grow it somehow, I think that would be, and then of course, then there's an appetite when people are older. It doesn't matter what you do, but you're still curious, you're still interested. So that audience is also there. And I also think, I just typed an answer, I think the quality of the content we see needs to really improve. The visual aspects of it should catch you, it should captivate you, you should really want to read it. And there's a lot of content out there, but I think in India we need to really make it much more accessible and interesting and exciting.
Dr. Geeta, thank you, Dr. Umar. And Dr. Umar, because we are running out of time, I'm hurrying through this. But I think that the thing that I wanted to ask you was, and you brought up this point about English language communication and science communication. Now, when we're talking about your organization and the fact that it tries to develop links between, let's say, science and industry and talk about innovation. And I know a whole bunch of businessmen who read still their newspaper in their mother tongue. So how do you start building these bridges between these communities? How do you make it more, how do you translate science? Especially in a country like India, where even if I talk about Hindi, there is a difference between Sarkari Hindi and Boli Bhasha. So how do you take this across in a way that people understand?
No, I think that's a huge challenge. And to be honest, I think we haven't done much, not only in CSIR, I think overall. I think, in fact, I think now the government of India and the PSA office is pushing for this national translational mission. And there are efforts. I think there is a recognition that there is a need for regional languages. And I think we are just beginning baby steps towards that. And only thing is at CSIR, I don't know, many of you may not be aware, there's a magazine called a Science Reporter, which is a very popular science magazine that's brought out in Hindi and Urdu also. It's been done for many years, but of course, that's only 3 languages. There are many, many more languages. But I think now there is a growing understanding. There is a need for regional languages, and we are working towards that. But I think it's still a long way to go. And the only forays which I can tell you is during the COVID pandemic, we try to do this regional webinars in regional languages, unfortunately, we have labs all over the country. So we got the scientists from those areas. And again, it was very difficult for the scientists to speak in regional languages because we are trained in the sciences to use scientific terms. And if you ask me suddenly to speak in my mother tongue in science, it's very, very hard. I think, again, you need to have workshops or exposure to these. And I think there is a long way to travel those, but we acknowledge that there is a need for this. And I do hope that with this Google translation and then people looking at it, and of course, you need the human intervention. You cannot leave it to the machines to do it. So you need resources dedicated towards doing it in the regional languages. And India is a very diverse country. And I think whatever languages you do, it's not sufficient. So I think there's a huge challenge there. But I think, first of all, recognizing the need for it and addressing the problem is the first step. And I think we need to do a lot more over there.
I think that I'm going to take the last two questions as very quick answers, maybe 2 to 3 lines each. I think the first thing is this, and this is something that you've read about in books as to how our entire generation of scientists was inspired by, let's say, Einstein or a Feynman or Watson and Crick. So the question here is this, that the impact of research promotion, okay, of hardcore scientific research, not popularization. How does it build up the next generation of scientists, and therefore what should we do for it? Let's start with Varun because, yeah, with ISF and all of that, yeah.
No, I'll give a short answer to it. But, you know, when I was doing a survey for my book, what we realized is that only around 35% people in undergrad institutions in the country report that they have read a research paper or know what a research paper is. Right. And I think that's what needs to be changed. So one of the major things of ISF has been to bring scientists and youth face to face. Right. And they don't even know what is a scientist. Who's a scientist is not some long bearded guy or, you know, someone sits in a lab or demystify. The career is like totally, people don't even know what a scientist is. Then, you know, Mr. India mein koi एक gadget बना रहा है, वो एक scientist है, demystify what it is. So again, we are scratching the surface. You know, the number of people who go, good people who go into Indian science, and when I say science, I mean research in both science and technology, is minuscule. And it's not only that we lose to brain drain, we also lose to the industry just because people are not aware. So if we can start fixing it, we'll be able to build a much stronger pipeline of people who are going into science, which is much needed in the country.
How do you excite youngsters into science with good research promotion? Would they even get excited when there's so many more attractive options?
Let me try and answer. So I think the problem today is, you know, what's glamorized is where people are interested in going towards, right? So sports is glamorized. Now entrepreneurship is glamorized, technology is glamorized. So young people will obviously be drawn to these fields. So unless research, and I don't mean glamorized in a wrong way or wrongly promoted, but even if communicated the potential. So I'll just quickly talk about an example from a researcher who I know well. He does research in titanium extraction. So I'd been reading his papers for years, but until he explained it to me, I didn't fully get it. He said that titanium is a rare metal, but it's not really rare, as in it's not available in small quantities. It's available in abundance, but the extraction process is very expensive. And once you extract it, though, it is fantastic. I said, so I'm working on making it cheaper. I said, so what? What if you make it cheaper? What would happen? He said, oh, titanium is a fantastic material. It is lightweight. It is super strong. It is anti-corrosive. So airplanes, air travel, all your human implants, from your pacemaker to your knee caps, everything has some element of titanium. But if more of titanium could be used, it would be affordable. It would be easy. It would just be reachable for everyone. Now, when I hear this explained, as compared to someone saying that, hey, I'm doing research on titanium extraction, it suddenly excites me. In fact, I want to do something on titanium. If I can solve this problem, imagine the legacy I'm leaving for the world, right? So it's not glamorizing in that way, but it's saying that, hey, research can solve big problems. So yeah, so I think that's what I would say, that how do you communicate the research? So Dr. Uma spoke about earlier that not just communicate from your agenda point of view, but communicate the what's in it. Why is this research important? Why do I care about this research? You see entrepreneurs explaining with passion about what they do, why they do. We need researchers also to communicate with the same passion about what they do, why they do. And I think a lot more of those stories will bring more younger folks into science.
Thank you, Abhishek. One of the questions that's come through on the chat has, and I'll just combine that with this question. How can we make students and young minds understand the importance of science? How do we encourage people to think about STEM in a positive light? Dr. Geeta?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I'd just like to say, I just can refer to the example what we are doing at CSIR, which is called as a Jigyasa program, which is inviting school students to the labs. And now, because of the pandemic, we are unable to do it, but we have started doing this where students can come and visit the labs, not just on the open days, but there are actually dedicated programs for all the school students, and they can meet the scientists, see the experiments to the extent possible, of course. But that's been hugely popular among students. And even now during the webinars we are doing, recently we've also launched a competition just to talk about it, Jigyasa Vigyan Mahotsav. And we've incorporated elements of science communication into that. We are training the students on comics or making, animation to convey science on some of the popular topics. So these are some of the initiatives, of course, again, given the country's large, these are again minuscule, but I think these are some of the things where they'll actually come and meet a scientist, talk to them or see the research labs, see what's going on. That's a way to excite, I think. That's one of the ways at least. Yeah.
Dr. Uma, how do you get, I mean, in your case, you have this giant tiger, which is the most exciting hook that anybody can have. But how do you get students excited about the research that you do, which is, it's not two test tubes coming together and boom, it's 5 years of work. And how do you get students excited in that life?
I think it just goes back to the will to communicate itself. So I think when you're giving any talk or having any interaction, the minute you stop communicating and just having a one-way dialogue, then it's over right there. And I think though that it's great to communicate science, to get a lot of young people excited about science, to have more people come into science. We should also remember that career options for people who specialize in pure science, people who do PhDs and so on, of course, there are the traditional career options of going into academia, but those are very few. Globally, there are many other roles scientists play in society, in other organizations, as scientists who work in the meteorology to wildlife management or whatever. There are scientists who are there in many other roles, and those career roles for scientists in other aspects of society have to also diversify. Once that also happens, once people can see, you don't have to just become a hermit and live in an ivory tower. That's not what a scientist does. But scientists also play roles in society as scientists. Not, I was a scientist and now I'm an entrepreneur, but as a scientist, I think there will be more interest also from younger people. That's my perspective.
Absolutely, the final question. One of the questions that's come from the audience. With the ambitious NRF unfolding with the promise to change the research ecosystem in India, what, according to the panelists, must be done now so that research communication becomes an integral part of this narrative? Okay, a minute each, please. Let's start with Abhishek.
So I think in India, we always talk about the fact that we skipped the telephone generation and we moved into mobiles, right? Before India was fully penetrated with telephones, we switched into mobile, and that then led to crazy progress across India, right? From agriculture to just about everything. I think something like that needs to be done. So Indian policymakers need to be forward-looking and be thinking that, okay, what is it that the world is talking about right now? What is the world needs? And we need to include that science communication as an active part of the NRF, active part of the policy. And Dr. Uma spoke about training, and he spoke to scientists across India, right? Everyone will speak about the lack of training, lack of funds, and administrative burden. And if NRF works to helping institutions solve this by better setting up of support departments and various other things like this, we can skip a generation. We can actually fast forward to becoming a leading nation in the world when it comes to science and research. So that's what I would say.
Geeta.
Yeah, so I think the new the emphasis has been much on science communication. And if you look at even the new education policy and many of these progressive looking things which are coming about, and I think there's a big role for science communication. And I think you pointed out right in the beginning that the EU framework and some of these can we adopt those kind of structures when we are giving grants to our, at least the funding agencies can look at it, that build in a component of mandatory kind of a science communication. Is that something which I think could be thought about to kind of formalize it? Although now people are doing mostly on their own who is interested, but could it be built into the granting system? I think that's something which is worth considering, I think, going forward.
Totally agree with Dr. Geeta and what Abhishek have also said. I think that if we could have grants, if you get a grant from NRF, a certain part of it, like say 1%, is locked or ring fenced for communication, and that may be extraneous to the grant amount you've asked for. It's like a top up or something like that. Additionally, in evaluating career trajectories of scientists for promotions and so on, this is something which should be specifically considered and rewarded. Otherwise, you can say whatever you want. Of course, everyone's supposed to be noble and well-intentioned, but if it is not coming into your evaluations, then it's not really in the longer term going to be, something which people will do. So I think these two small steps, ring-fenced funds for communication along with grants and incorporating it in evaluation for scientists would be small but concrete steps in this direction.
Varun, is this expectation of the scientist to be this all-in-one, which is what Uma touched on at the beginning? मैं science भी करती हूँ, I run a household, I teach students, I do administrative work, I do accounts, I do project management, I also convince policymakers, I also go out to the media, I also speak to local communities. Is this expecting too much? And how do we kind of help them communicate better? How do you provide those infrastructure within the NRF for them to be able to at least spend more time on science and research and less on the rest?
Sure. So Harini, I think one point here to understand is that every scientist shouldn't be expected to do all of it, right? Every scientist will fall on his or her niche, right? Someone would like to do public communication. Someone might want to do industry instantiation. Someone might want to win the best teacher awards every year, right? Which are also prestigious. So I don't think it's one form fits all. But having said that, the support offices in Indian institutions are extremely poor, be it administrative support, be it science com support, be it industry licensing support. Industry licensing, one faculty will be given additional duty to license with the industry as well, right? Which doesn't make any sense. So what NRF can do is to make sure that they have proper ring-fenced budget for this, as Uma was saying, right? But have a good concrete budget item in their thing and not think that, oh, this is a rounding error which we don't need to consider. This needs to be considered. The money has to be spent on support services if you really want to build institutions. The other comment I would just like to make is that NRF should, controversial comment, but I don't think government is good at executing things themselves. So government should do capacity building in science communication, that is supporting institutions in the ecosystem which are already working in science communication, be it the research institutions themselves, be it, there have been multiple partners we have had in ISF who are doing different parts of science communication, there's Cactus and so on. And NRI should be open to be able to fund all these different kinds of organizations to scale up their programs and use an ecosystem approach to build the system rather than saying, okay, these are 5 problems to solve. Now we will make 10 groups, 10 people groups in the ministry or in NRF who will sit and do it. And that always kind of fails. So we need to have a programmatic approach where we have a ring-fenced budget and we are running these programs where non-governmental organizations is helping build the ecosystem.
And thank you all. That is a lovely conversation. And what I'd like you to do, each of you, is to maybe give a final statement before we close. Start with Dr. Uma.
I think I've talked a lot, but thanks so much for this invitation. And I think there's a lot of exciting ideas, and I hope that I think at least for someone like me who works in a publicly funded institution, this is really a responsibility. And I hope that Indians in the future can really enjoy science and look to scientists for more enjoyment.
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed being in this session, and I think I must compliment India ISF for this lovely conversation. And I think we need many more of this. I think, again, I come back to the scale of our country. I think we need many, many more events like this. And the last point which struck me while I was all this is, I just would like to live is, not all research is very easy for communication. And I think having a overarching, because I come from basic science originally, and I know how difficult it is to get basic science to be communicated, because it's very hard for people to see it. Like Uma is lucky that she works on tigers, people get excited, perhaps. But I think, so not all sciences are very easy to communicate, and that's a challenge, I think, which we really did not touch upon today. But I think that's something we have to be cognizant of also, because everybody wants grand conclusions, but science doesn't go that way. And I think that's a challenge which, as science communicators, we need to face and be aware of. That's the last thought which I thought I should share before I, again, thanks to the organizers. Yeah.
Should I go next? Harini?
Your concluding comments.
Yeah, conclude. So quick, just one thing I would want to mention, and this is to the earlier question around bringing science to the young generation. I think Indian science comm needs some big bang things which happen rather than these small initiatives, right? We need some big bang things. One example which I was thinking about was the Munna Bhai movie, right? And how it brought Gandhiji back, right? We have to think in a larger canvas and say, how do we entrench science into commoners? And it needs to be a very creative kind of approach. And if we can have some of those big bangs that will, that can help move the ecosystem, not saying that the other things are not important, they are as important. And I'd like to also thank, Harini, you and Abhishek and Cactus, who've been a very worthy partner for us here at ISF. So thanks for supporting the event and being a part of it.
Abhishek, your final comments.
I think Varun spoke stole what I was going to say. I think India needs a few science heroes. I'm using heroes as a generic word, right? Because unless we have a few science heroes, policy, inspiration, kids, I can imagine parents today pushing their kids into technology because that's what everyone reads about, right? But if we have a few figures to look up to that are current, so I think that would be my wish actually. If I were to talk to media houses and all, how do we discover and make a few science heroes in India and talk about them every month, write about them, talk about them, write about them, talk about them, and then that starts a dialogue. And of course, if we can do a movie, we should talk to Vinod Chopra and see if we can do a movie on science. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for a lovely session. And thank you, Varun, and thank you, everybody with ISF for organizing this.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Harini. And on behalf of India Science Festival, Past India, we'd like to extend a very, very big thank you to all of our panelists today. It was such a pleasure listening to this conversation. Harini, a big thanks to you for moderating it so beautifully. Couldn't have asked for anyone better to take us through this conversation. It was really insightful. Uma, Geeta, Abhishek, and Varun, thank you for so many insightful points. And I must take a special I must take a minute to thank you all for engaging in the Q&A tab continuously. I can see that you answered so many questions. It was very kind of you all to do that. So thank you. And here's hoping that we can meet on a closer level next year, hoping that the pandemic comes to an end and we're able to interact in an offline setting and actually celebrate science at India Science Festival in a bigger way. And of course, here's hoping to continue our collaborations with Cactus Communications, Impact Science and Researcher Life in the coming years. So thank you so much for this panel discussion. It was an absolute thrilled to listen to all of you. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Attendees who stuck by, I just want to inform everyone that this was not the last session for today. So we've had the pleasure of listening to some wonderful researchers, industry professionals, scientists, communicators at all our sessions today. And I really hope that you enjoyed this discussion that was in partnership with Impact Science at Cactus Communications. A special shout out to Dr. Sara Iqbal, ISF's strategic advisor, and Dr. Smita Jain from Cactus Communications for curating this panel discussion for us. It was really lovely. And with that, I'll just quickly touch upon the next event that we have planned for you all. So we've mentioned that we have a lot of interesting contests and competitions at India Science Festival. One of them is Talk Your Thesis, which is a competition for MS PhD students who are working on their dissertations or thesis. And the idea is to present their thesis in 10 minutes. And this contest or competition is an international one. We invited participants to send in their entries from all over the globe. And we, through a very rigorous shortlisting process, we came down to 5 finalists who are going to be presenting their thesis live at the festival. We've already had the pleasure of listening to 2 of our finalists, but the 3rd finalist is going to be speaking at the festival live right now. And Talk Your Thesis comes with a very interesting component of mentorship. So all of our finalists are mentored to present their thesis in a more coherent manner so that non-specialist audiences can understand their work better. So can I please request Arun to kindly switch on his audio video. Arun, thank you so much for joining in. Such a pleasure to host you at ISF. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for letting me in. Thanks for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to present my work to the audience that we know that they are not the specialists, so I have to explain my thesis in very common language. Yeah, it's good.
Absolutely. So Arun, are you all set? Do you want to just check if you can share your screen, and maybe then we'll start a timer. You have 10 minutes to present your thesis. And I just want to tell our attendees that once Arun finishes his talk, we have a very exciting jam competition. So it's a science jam, just a minute. Where we give you very fun, quirky, geeky topics to talk about, and you have to speak for 60 seconds. And the best jam winners get exciting prizes. So please stick around for a very fun contest after this talk too. So Arun, I can see your screen, and yeah. I'm just quickly going to turn off my audio and video, and I'll give you a signal and you can start. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right, you can start in 3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, everyone. We all age, but why and how does our body reflect these changes? One is that we start forgetting the things. The other one, we can say changes in our posture, movement, or reflexes. What happens with our body that starts developing these signs and symptoms with aging? Today, I'll talk about the aging-related changes that occur in our brain. When we are born, we have a fixed number of neurons with us, and we have to live our whole life with those fixed number of neurons. And if something goes awry with, or some changes happen in our brain cells, that then the cells start dying, then there is no other cells to replace their functions. And there comes the problem. Now, let's talk about this problem in detail. Proteins are called workhorses of the cells. That means we talk, we walk, we think, we sing, we swim, we exercise. Whatever you can think of, we do all because of the proteins. And to perform all these functions, cells continuously synthesize thousands of different types of proteins inside the cells. At the same time, cells need to get rid of the old ones and the ones which are not performing their functions anymore. To perform all these tasks, cells have certain set of proteins, which we can call quality control group of proteins, which continuously keeps checking for abnormal changes happening in our protein repertoire and keep on monitoring all those changes by addressing the problem of synthesis, structure, or the degradation pathway. This is similar to what police department, law enforcement agencies, or judicial system does in our society, which keep the system in order under certain rules and regulations. Now you must be thinking, if we all have this quality control group of proteins inside the cells, then why do these abnormal changes occur? Then I would say, if we all have police or judicial system in place, then why do crimes happen? This statement itself has half of the answer. Let me elaborate a little more. We all know that despite all the rules and regulations, there are always some fringe elements in the society, which keeps threatening the law and order situation. In the same way, inside our cells, we all have all kinds of regulatory mechanisms. Still, certain group of proteins have tendency to aggregate or lose their structure and start misfolding and aggregate. Sometimes we call them amyloids. Sometimes they are even transmissible from one person to another or one animal to another, and the group of proteins are called prions, leading to large set of diseases. Now, we will understand what happens if these proteins start accumulating or misfolding inside or out of the cell areas. If we look at this picture, you can see lots of cellular debris are collected over time, both inside and outside of the cells. And it is obvious that we need to get rid of these debris as soon as possible to make the cells happy and healthy again. Sometimes cell division helps in diluting or get rid of these debris, and that's why new cells look more healthier than the old ones. But in case of neurons, as I already told you, they do not divide. So this option is already closed. In that scenario, cells invest a lot in maintenance, surveillance, and quality control functions. Unfortunately, during the stress conditions, mental or environmental changes, or because of the aging-related changes, these systems get overwhelmed, and our cells start accumulating protein aggregates inside the cells, or sometimes outside the cells. You can see here that with age, the balance between synthesis and degradation shifts, and abnormal accumulation of proteins may lead to different disadvantageous changes, like some neurons start dying and some brain areas look empty in this picture. If we want to understand this, I can tell you with an example. Just imagine a busy road. Let's say Connaught Place Circle in New Delhi. Imagine a situation if two cars strike or collide with each other in the middle of the road. What would happen with the traffic? Within a minute of time, I can think whole traffic would stop and long queue of cars, which we refer as traffic jam, occurs. We can easily assume a similar situation happening in our brain. Once there are large amount of debris sitting inside or just out of the cell, the whole cellular traffic in which all the cell molecules keep traveling from one location to another, the whole metabolic pathway inside the cells which keep running 24/7, they all get disturbed. And lots of abnormal changes happening inside leading to collapse of the cellular system or loss of neurons. Since neurons do not divide, there are no mechanisms to replace those dying cells inside the brain. So what happens? The function assigned to those neurons get lost. For example, if there is a brain region that is specific for storage of memory, and if neurons start dying in that area, for example, hippocampus brain area in Alzheimer's disease, we will start forgetting things, or we will have hard time in recalling or retrieving the old stored memories, which is very common in old age, right? We start forgetting things like where did we keep our keys, right? So I would recommend you all watching a beautiful movie, Bollywood movie, You Me or Hum, where Kajol played an Alzheimer patient's role beautifully. You will understand the severity of these conditions that I'm talking about. Same thing happens in many other diseases, where the brain areas which are responsible for movements have this degeneration problem. For example, Parkinson's disease, in which you can see the tremors or shivering hand of the people affected with these diseases. Another well-known disease is motor neuron disease. You all must be knowing or heard of the name of the famous physicist, Dr. Stephen Hawking. In the picture, you can see him. He had same disease, and he's one of the longest survivor. Almost 50 years he spent with this disease, and you can see that he was not able to move, even not to speak, but his brain and intellectual abilities were working fine. And So why I'm telling you all these is that the functions assigned to a particular brain area get affected or lost once the neurons of that particular area start dying. Now, you must be thinking that this person is talking about all the problems. Do we have solutions to? Then let me tell you that most of these diseases are still uncurable. We can only delay the symptom or try to extend the lifespan by improving the quality of life of the patients. How can we do that? Here is the answer. As I told you, many of these changes occur because of the overwhelming conditions of the quality control pathways during the aging or stress conditions. So one thing we can do is we can strengthen these armors, these protecting armors of ourselves to help ourselves live longer and have healthier life. The proteins which can pick the obnoxious elements and either dispose them into, you can say, jails where we can get rid of them, or they can be assigned to a counseling or rehabilitation centers where they can be treated or modified in a way that they can come back to the society. In brief summary of what I discussed till now, here you can see that certain group of proteins, we can say stressors, may mount stress conditions or attack neurons because of their abnormal behaviors. Whereas other group of proteins, protectors, keep on checking, monitoring, or policing all those criminals inside the cells and make the cellular environment clean so that the cells keep themselves healthy and live longer. This picture is another depiction where I have shown life in a playground, where all kinds of environmental stresses or mental or life-threatening circumstances or many other kinds of issues that you can assume all keep pushing your cellular quality control at one corner. But your cells have the responsibility and capacity to tackle all those changes and fight them back to keep yourself and your body healthy and make you live longer. As I did in my PhD at IIT Jodhpur, and many more labs are doing this piece of research, that we can identify small molecules occurring in plants or other natural sources to supplement our brain system with those small molecules, or you can say including several spices in your diet or many other components that we can supplement your diet with to fight these conditions. And these molecules can help your protectors to fight more efficiently and for a longer duration of your life. We identified small molecules that can enhance the efficiency of different protecting armors of our cells, which help the cells to fight back various changes and abnormal changes at the protein level. Later, I work with some nanoparticle-based groups, which can help in targeted or more efficient delivery of these small molecules to the specific locations where they are needed most. The idea is to enhance the delivery and target the specific locations of the brain. In this way, we can address many issues that are culminated over the years of our brain, of our long lifespan in our brain cells, and we can supplement our cells and our protein quality control machinery to fight all different stresses, including aging-related changes, accumulating change or changing environmental conditions, oxidative stress, high temperature-related stresses, high sound frequency waves-related stresses, and all kinds of stresses can be dealt with more efficient manner by taking those situations and making your life easier and healthier. This is what I had to tell about my research work. I hope you enjoyed all the presentation, all the slides, and what I have talked to you. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at the given email address. Thank you.
So much, Arun. That was really fantastic, and you ended dot on time. So that was really well done, and thank you for quoting so many examples. That was really interesting, and I think it made your talk a lot more relatable. So, I think we have to move on to the next session. We're already running a little late. But thank you so much for such a beautiful talk. And here's hoping that the best candidate wins at Talk Your Thesis. We'll be in touch in the coming weeks with the results. And I really hope that you enjoyed the process of participating in this competition. And here's hope that we get to associate with you in the coming years.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, as promised, we to be starting with a very fun contest. So can I please invite the Jam Master on stage. Abhimanyu is going to take this session forward. Hi, Abhimanyu. How are you doing?
I'm doing perfect. Thank you so much, Shruti, for that last talk. I mean, I had no idea I was going to learn so much in 15 minutes. The constant interplay between like stressor and protector neurons. Like I didn't even know that our neural system needs to be protected in the first place. So I think our finalists did really well on that last event. But I think without
Great.
further
And
ado,
I think,
yeah,
let's begin. I'm going to quickly hop off. I'll just move out of the session, and I'll give Abhishek the control to take this session forward.
Sure.
Just a quick note, in the backend team, once I make you the host, you might have to start recording again. So just make a note of that. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Shruti. So hi, everyone. Welcome to the Jam session for ISF 2022. Before we begin, let me just present my screen. Okay, guys, I hope my screen is visible to everybody. And like before we even begin, I would like to share a bit about my experience with jam sessions. So this is the third time we are conducting a jam session, like for the past 2 years. We have been doing so, like this is an official part of ISF. So one thing that I've experienced is that these sessions are one of the most fun events out of all, right? So a lot of you might be thinking that this is just public speaking. That's not the case. Let me tell you why. So for those of you who are not aware about the official format of jam events, I'm going to list down the rules. And the rules are just as simple as that. So you get a topic and you get a topic on the spot, right? And then you have to speak on it for 60 seconds. That's it. That's all there is to this competition. Now, why I'm saying that this is different from traditional public speaking, it's because in traditional speeches and all, you get your topic at least 24 hours to like 2 or 3 days before. You get ample time to prepare for it. And then the topics, they've generally got to do something that are generic, right? That everybody can write on. Here you get the topic on the spot, so you don't get any time to prepare. There's no preparation whatsoever involved in this. And then the topics are so out of the box that and as you're going to see it in the coming slides, you cannot technically prepare for them. So the things that are needed in this competition is just a little bit of liquid luck, a little bit of courage, and then your ingenuity to be able to think up stuff on the spot and present your thoughts in a creative and like witty fashion. So that's all there is to it. This is a completely general competition. So no experts here. And that's why I encourage all of you to take a part in this. I know you might have, like a lot of you might have intended to come here as just a member of the audience, but I still encourage you to take part in this competition because I promise that this is going to be so much fun. All right. So without further ado, let's kick off this competition. And right now, I want everybody to focus on their Zoom windows. So there must be a chat box right there, which would be disabled right now. I want everybody to focus on their chat windows. So what we are going to do is when I give the signal, we are going to open up the chat session for everybody and you would be able to ping your messages there. So what I want you to do, like for all of those who are interested in participating, I want you to write a single message that contains your name and your age, and then shoot it off to us, right? So just a single message containing your name and your age. And basically, we are going to open this chat window for just 120 seconds or 2 minutes. And that is all the time you have to register your name. So once the chat window closes after 2 minutes, so we are going to get a list of all those people who are interested in participating, and then we are going to schedule your 1-minute sessions. All right. So right about now, I'm going to give that signal. So could my team please open up the chat session? So guys, it must be open right about now, and it's your time to send in your name and officially enter this competition. So while you guys are sending your name, I would like to relate a story that like I feel all of you would appreciate. So back when I was in college, I had this friend who was very good at public speaking. So he had taken part in so many public speaking events right from the time he was in school and then up to college. And he would kill it in every event. He would speak so eloquently. He would prepare so well. He would win every single event. And then once upon a time, we decided to like participate in a jam session. So it was our first experience with like jam sessions. We had no experience in speaking extempore, and we just thought it might be fun. So right. So that guy, the one I'm talking about, he just entered this competition. He went up to the stage and he got his first topic. His topic was you die and you are reborn in a black hole. And he got it on the spot. Now, you could prepare about black holes, right? You could remember all the equations of the black holes, how they work, their mechanisms and everything, right? But you can do that if you've got 2 months to prepare, not when you've got like 1 minute to prepare and you have to speak on it straight away. So my friend, he went completely blank on that. And we knew him to be such a good speaker, but he couldn't speak because he couldn't come up with stuff on the spot. And the person who won that competition, he spoke something fun, something witty and humorous. And like right on the spot, he made up a story about being reborn in a black hole, and he just won that competition. And that was like very surprising for all of us. So I encourage as many participants as possible to enter this competition, because one thing that I can ensure you that it is going to be so much fun. I think we've got a lot of entries, a lot of participants. I'll give you last 10 seconds for entering your name in the competition, and then we're going to close the chat window for sure. So this, you can think of this as the last call. All right, I think we can go ahead and close the chat window. I hope all of those who wanted to participate have submitted their names. All right. So before we proceed further, I would also like to take up some questions and answers, like in case you guys have any confusion about the format of the event. So one question that we've got over here is opening the camera necessary for the participants? So audio obviously is compulsory because that is how you're going to make your speech, but for camera, like we are like a good either way. So if you want, you can turn on your camera if you want everybody to see you while you make your speech, because that can add more weight to your presentation. But if you don't want to turn on the camera, that is okay too. So no pressure there. All right, great. Okay, so another question we've got is, how are you going to call us out? Okay, so this is important, right? So for all of those who have submitted their names to be officially the participants here, what we are going to do is that my team is going to reach out to you at any point in the in the duration of the competition. So I just want you to keep an eye out on your messages. And what we're going to do is like a couple of minutes before we schedule your session, we are going to give you your topic over the chat. And basically, we are going to promote you to a panelist here. And as I call out your name, you can basically turn on your audio and your camera and you can speak. So don't worry about that for now. We are going to, as we start off with that process, you're going to become familiar with it. All right. Okay, guys. So I think it's time to officially begin the competition. Just give me a second to get ready with our first participant. All right. So first up, we have Janki. Janki, are you here with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Janki. Janki, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can.
All right. Perfect, Janki. So Janki, how are you feeling? Are you nervous, excited?
Kind of both.
Kind of both. All right. So let me just show you your topic. Your topic is, you wake up in the middle of the night to go drink some water and find your dog sitting at your laptop typing in some commands. On seeing you, he quickly switches the window. Janki?
Yeah.
Your 1 minute starts now. Please go ahead.
I'd woken up in the middle of the night, getting up to drink some water, and oh my God, what did I see? My dog typing away on my laptop. I quickly ran to the computer. Oh my God, my files are there. What am I going to do? Who's going to? What did my dog do to my computer? Did he destroy some files? Did he do what? Now I have to stalk on my dog. Was he chatting with somebody, or was he on Dogstagram? Or is there something of the tutor of sorts for dogs? I don't know if there's a dog Reddit and he was bitching about me. There are thousands of thoughts in my mind. I'm thinking about the possibilities of what he could do and what he could not do. Meanwhile, when I type on my computer, I see it is already shut down. How quickly did he do that? But it's a dog. When did dogs start doing that? But okay, let me type in and see what was he doing. Let me look at the history. I type in the password and I try to open, but the password has been changed. Oh my God, a dog did that. Next day, I go to the computer store, ask the people to help me with the computer. And what I found out, my dog was jealous that I was spending so much time on my computer, bitching about me not spending time with him. Now that he changed the password, I know where his possibilities lie, and I will spend more time with him.
I had I had no idea, Janki, that you had such a perceptive, such an intelligent dog as a pet, and the one that is so social media savvy as well. But I must say that that was a wonderful story that you cooked up in just a minute on such a short notice, and that is the kind of spirit that we're looking for in this competition. Very well done, Janki. Thank you so much for participating. All right. So I think that was a brilliant first story for the competition. Let's call up our next contestant, who is Harish V. Harish, do we have you with us?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Harish. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
I'm perfect. I'm wonderful. So are you excited about your topic?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'm going to display your topic on the screen for everybody to see, and then we'll kick off your 1 minute. All right. So this is your topic. You're gazing at the night sky and suddenly the moon explodes.
Sir, actually, first I'm photographing the moon through a telescope, and when I took my phone near to it, I saw the moon look like there is no moon in the night sky, and then when I took my eye off the telescope, I saw the moon exploded and shattered into pieces like a glass, and then one of the pieces made a fireball while coming to Earth, and then it struck somewhere which I couldn't see, but it was not a perceived meteor shower. Instead, I would call it as a lunar meteor shower.
That idea is so interesting, so fascinating. A lunar meteor shower. Oh my God. Wow. That was such a good story that you made up there. So thank you so much, Harish, for participating. I hope all our other contestants speak as well as you did. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bye. So next up, we have Sumedha. Sumedha, do we have you with us?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Sumedha. How are you doing this evening?
I'm absolutely fine. How are you, Abhimanyu?
I'm perfect. And you sound very interesting. You look like you look very excited. So I wonder what your topic is because I haven't seen it till now. Let me just
I have no
share
idea what I'm going to speak about it though. Okay.
Okay. But for now, I put your topic up on the screen. So it is, you just found out that your cat is an alien from the outer space. Shit, that is a very interesting one. So I'll start your 1 minute. So Veda, we are good to go now. Please go ahead.
I'm a neuroscientist. I torture animals. Okay. I pick up cats from here and there and I look at them and I look at how they walk, how they scratch, how they behave in absolutely under any circumstances. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Just say.
That's okay.
And one day what happened is I was seeing how my cat walks on ladders and my cat started jumping from here and there. And it was absolutely amazing. I mean, I had never seen an animal behave like that. So I grabbed onto its tail and the cat kept moving here from there and it was jumping across buildings and it started jumping into the night sky. But I did not leave its tail. And one time, and I just found out that it was not a cat at all. It was something else. And before I know it, I was on another planet. And here, I was the alien. Maybe I will be the one that will be experimented on now.
Oh my God. You should try your hand at screenwriting or something. First of all, you're not a neurosurgeon, right? It was just for the story.
I have no idea about anything.
Your conviction when you said that dialogue, like there was so much conviction on your voice that for a minute I was confused. Okay, maybe she's really a neurosurgeon.
Come on.
Yeah, your story was wonderful, but there's just one advice that I would give you. Please don't grab the tail of a cat ever.
Absolutely. Noted. When my cat is not an alien, I will not do that.
Right. You're going to regret it so much. But thank you so much, Sumedha, for joining.
Thank you.
All right. That was a very interesting story. So next up, let me just check. Okay. So next up, we have Chandana Khushi. First of all, am I pronouncing that name right? Chandana, are you here with us? Hello. Hi, Chandana. Okay, I think there must.
Hello. Yeah, I was lately made pain list.
Okay. It's totally okay, Chandana. So can you hear my voice clearly?
Yeah, I could. Right.
Okay,
now.
So the connection is good to go.
Yeah, it's not Chandana, it's Chandana.
Yeah. I'm so sorry about that. I think there's some cultural difference that is at play here. So,
okay.
All right. So let's just put your topic up on the screen and start your 1 minute. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is it, right? In the middle of the day, right in front of everybody's eyes, the sun disappears. It just vanishes from the sky. What do you do? Your 1 minute starts now.
Okay. It's like if the sun were to suddenly vanish, then the effects would be very, we would be feeling it very immediately. Like it's nearly 50 years ago, we had seen a solar eclipse. Where a solar eclipse is in this semi-deserted area. I also remember it will be a remarkable experience that we will not only witness a grandeur of a solar eclipse in cloudless sky, but we can also see it effect in every individual. Like I could also imagine a nearby zebra herd becoming so agitated as the dark came hours early with the sun, and even it is still high in the sky. And there are many birds flying about promptly became quiet as they settle down for the night also. And during this, between very few minutes of this near darkness, we could also feel the temperature will go to 5 to 6 degrees. And of course, the earth has a very big molten irons in them. And I can just imagine my life in day on all of my life. With that thought, everyone became agitated, and that's all.
Chandna, I'm so sorry, I'll have to stop you, but I must say the way you mixed up your imagination with some actual science in that story, that was really cool. Right? The way you connected it with the solar eclipse and then the temperatures, the actual effect it would have on temperatures, that was a very good dimension to cover in this question. Thank you so much, Anna, for participating. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So next up, we have Shruti. Shruti, are you here with us?
Hey.
Hi, Shruti. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm perfect. So are you enjoying this competition thus far?
Yeah. It was great listening to all these kids. They make up such good stories, man.
I am right now so relieved that I'm not on the other side of this. Like, I'm sure if I was a participant, right? So I couldn't have done what these people are doing, especially the ones who are so young. Right?
And these topics are amazing, dude.
Thank you so much. Our team worked really hard for these. That was a very good compliment. Okay, so let's just put your topic, and I think you've got one of the best ones. I'll just read it out to everybody. You got caught in a giant spider's web. The gargantuan spider is approaching you. What do you do? Hurry.
So first of all, I'll say, oh my God, you're huge. I get to hear that a lot. I'm sure that you get to hear that too in your community. Is that like you're large in your community? Others are just small ones. Okay, so maybe we can be best friends and share our thoughts and struggles. What happens to you? What happens to a person who is basically huge? And yeah, we can share our thoughts. What else do you get to hear? At times it bothers me to hear all this, but it's kind of interesting when you get all that attention. So what exactly do you think that you're gonna do with me? I'll talk to, like, this is me talking to the spider. What else do you think you're gonna do with me? Were you going to eat me up? Please just relax. Let's not do this. Let's be friends and share our shared values and struggles with each other. I'm sure the spider's heart will melt listening to all this, that it can relate to someone, and we can share and chat all night. And maybe I can help the spider to get someone else. We can kind of get a group of giant people from all the communities or so.
Shruti, that was a very interesting answer. I can't believe you just played psychotherapist to a spider.
Yeah.
The spider would be like, when did I sign up for this therapy session? I mean,
we can get to the personality typing and all, like, oh, lonely and this, that.
Definitely. I'm pretty sure the spider would start crying, right? I mean, if this question had gone to anybody else, their first concern would have been, how do I not get eaten? And you suddenly just opened up all the insecurities of the spider. Right. That was a wonderful answer, Shruti. Thank you so much for joining us. All right.
Thank you for having me. Okay, I stop the video and mute.
Thanks, Shruti. So next up, we have Bhupendra Sahu. Bhupendra, are you with us? Bhupendra, if you can hear me, please just turn on your mic and say something.
Yes, I am there. Right.
Hi, Bhupendra. Welcome to the event. I hope you're ready for your question.
Yes.
So here it is. What if we built a ladder to reach the moon? Your 1 minute starts now, Bhupendra.
Suddenly, I'm slapped, and my dream comes true that my mom says that come to the home from the moon right now. It's the dinner time. Come here. I wake up and see outside my window that there is a ladder going to the moon. Oh, wow. It's a great time to think, because last night it is very heavy and stressful for me to do for the works. Let's go to the moon to have a lighter weight and light the stress on my mind. I go with my friends and say, let's reach the moon and grow some plants from there. And we again come down. Sorry. We again come down from this and say that we also go to the Amarnath Yatra like that also.
Nice. Bhupendra, I must stop you here because your 1 minute is up. But one thing I really admire is how you touched upon so many dimensions, right, for this topic. I mean, especially the one where you can like so easily lose so much of weight once you go to the moon. I think I'm going to stop working out from tomorrow because this sounds like a very good idea to lose weight. Just go to the moon, right? Very interesting answer, I must say, Bhupendra. Thank you so much for joining. All right. Next up, we have Rajanya. Once again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this name correct. Rajanya, please turn on your mic and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, sir. Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're perfectly audible, Rajanya. Please go ahead.
So my name is Rajanya.
Rajanya. All right, Rajanya. So let's get your topic on the screen. You dive into the Pacific Ocean and come out on the top of the Mount Everest. What the hell is going on? That is a very interesting question. Rajanya, are you ready to speak on it?
Yes.
So let's start your 1 minute. Go, Rajanya.
So I was sleeping, and while I was sleeping, I was dreaming that I have become a scuba diver. Now I dive in the Pacific Ocean, and suddenly when I came up on the surface of the ocean, I found that I was on the Mount Everest. I thought that where I am, and it's why so snow? Did the Pacific Ocean turn into ice? Has the sun died out? So I was thinking all of this, and suddenly the Mount Everest started to shake. I was thinking that what the hell is going on? Why why the mountain is shaking? Is there any avalanche going to start? Then I thought that I should come down from the Mount Everest. And I was coming down, and while I was coming down, I slipped my leg and fell down. When I fell down, I saw that I fell from my bed because I was dreaming that I will become a scuba diver.
Wow, that's such an interesting story. And you finished it in just 60 seconds. Like you were so point on with the time. Oh, that was really good. I think if something like this would happen to me, this is the same thing I am going to come up with. Okay, this is something that is so like wild, so out of your common imagination that it can only happen in your sleep, in a dream, right? That was a very good angle you took with this. Thank you so much, Rajanya, for joining us. All right. Okay, moving on. Next up, we have Nehal Joshi with us. So Nehal, are you here?
Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
Hi, Nehal. How are you doing?
Good, sir.
Nice. I like your topic as well. I'm pretty sure others must be wondering what it is. So I'm just going to put it up on the screen right now. Scientists at CERN laboratory get carried away. Their experiments create a black hole. Oh,
Okay.
wow. Go.
Now I remember my childhood poem is the sun is our father, stars are our mother, and planets are our brother. By hearing this poem in childhood, I know that in the universe there are only stars, planets, and sun. But now after studying higher standards, I know the universe is a very big, very exciting things are in the universe, big galaxies. And the mentioned thing in the universe is the black hole. And this is the very exciting thing. And if CRN scientists make the black hole, and I definitely join them because I have dreamed to make a scientist, and to creating a black hole is a very great achievement. And the one incidence is in the physics, I learned gravitation topic. This topic is a very difficult for me, and hence my teacher tells us, Nehal, you go to black hole and see where is the gravity, where is the gravitational potential, and hence the black hole is very important for me. And if this good scientists are try to make this black hole, I definitely join them. And this is the imaginative and very exciting for me. Thank you.
Nehal, I'm so impressed with your answer, because if this situation were to happen with anybody else, like first thing they would be worried about is, okay, how do I survive this? Yes. But that is not on your mind. What you want is to go out there and actually study that thing. So that shows to me that you've got that scientific curiosity at your heart, which I think we need more in our society.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So Nehal, before you go, let me ask you one thing. Is my voice perfectly audible, or is there some disturbance when I speak? It's okay now? It's good now?
Yes, sir, definitely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nehal, for joining.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. All right. Next up, we have Janani KG. Janani, do we have with you? Do we have you with us? I'm so sorry for the slip of tongue.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's give you your topic. Jani, correct me if I'm wrong. This is your topic, right? You just discovered that your mathematics teacher, Mrs. Kulkarni, is an AI.
Yes, sir. This is my topic.
Yeah. So please go ahead. Your 60 seconds start now.
Okay, sir. So basically, I'm not a very good student. So I'm an average performer. So usually when it comes to studies and, finishing up homeworks, it's only in the last minute. So it's actually very pathetic if your maths teacher is going to be a robot. So if he or she is going to be a robot, so he or she is going to be very accurate. Then is going to be like functioning at a total ultra speed. So everything is under check and you can't escape. So it'd be really hard to manage things up in class, even with a actual human teacher. So that's all.
Definitely, that's going to be a very, very strict scenario. I mean, if human mathematics teachers are so strict, right? So what would a robot AI teacher do? Like that, Mrs. Kulkarni is going to make your life hell. That is one thing I can assure you. So let's just hope that doesn't happen in real life, and she stays human, right? All right. By the way, do you have any math teacher that you actually liked?
Yes, sir. I have one. Like we had a great maths teacher, but she's gonna be like very strict about homeworks, but she's good like at teaching.
Chalo,
Yeah,
I'm
that was a
very
nice topic, sir.
yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for joining with us. Okay. So up next we have Monideep Chakraborty. Monideep, do we have you with us?
Yes, of course I am.
Hi, Monideep. Yeah. Hi.
Am I visible?
Yeah, you are both visible and audible. So let's just put your topic on the screen so that everybody can see it. Earth has turned from a sphere to a cube overnight. Scientists are going crazy. What next? What next,
Okay,
Monideep? Please share with
I
us.
have very little idea about mathematics. So I am going to mess up with the geometries coming up with the Earth. Okay, so we are getting some new edges, vertices. So I will be finding that who are the persons at that time present in that edges and in that vertices. Okay, and the geometries are going to mess up with it, and the volumes. So the Isaac equations, what are traditionally followed, are going to mess up again. Okay, so there is something more about the more to find out from the scientists. Okay, so since I'm a biology student, so I have to take up the reactions of the human beings. What are the attitudes of the attitudes of the people with the geometries, with the shape? Okay, so that's it, and
Wow.
that's a crazy thing.
Monideep, you finished just in time. One question that I have from you is, if Earth actually turned into a cube, where would you like to live? On one of the faces, on one of the edges, or on one of the corners?
I will like to live in the corner.
Ah, and why is that, may I ask?
Okay, so corner, if you are living in an edge, okay, you can get someone to share with the edges. Okay, but corner is a single point. Okay, so you are the owner of that point.
That was a pretty smart answer, I must say. So thank you so much, Monideep, for joining.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. Guys, next up we have Shania. Shania, are you here with us?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Shania. So I'm just going to put your topic up on the screen and start your 1 minute. Yeah, so this is it. Shania, you discover a secret tunnel under your home. Where does it lead? Where does it lead, Shania? Please share with us, with all of us.
I found out a secret tunnel under my home. It leads to me in a heaven. Yeah, heaven. When I was child, my mom said the stories of angels and stars and suns and moons. So they have the way I want to go is right on my home, and I just go through that way, taking my mom with me. And I'm telling mom, this was only that universe you was telling me story when I was child. Really, it's very beautiful. And this universe make me refresh my childhood days when my mom said the story of universe. Thank you.
That was a really good answer. I didn't think that like if one could take this particular topic into that direction, but wow, that was really good, really good. Thank you so much, Anaya.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's move on to our next
And
contestant.
and so the topics which you are choosing is just an amazing.
Thank you so much, Anaya. You did complete justice to this one, at least I can say that.
Okay,
All
all the
right.
best for further programs. Sir. Thank you.
Cool. So after Shanaya, we have got Shraddha. Shraddha, are you here with us? Hi, Shraddha, Earth to Shraddha. Oh, I see the irony of that statement. Like my background is outer space. Anyway, Shraddha, if you're here with us, I want you to please turn on your mic and say something. I think we have lost connection with her. So if she comes back, we are going to try to get her in. But since this is a time-bound event, we will have to move forward with our next contestant, who is Krish Kumar Gupta. Krish, are you here with us? Hi, Krish. I think your voice is a bit muffled. So if you could just speak up or say something, let's just confirm that everybody can hear you perfectly.
Hello.
Can you try that once again?
Hello, sir.
Hi, Krish. Now you're audible. So we are going to put a topic up on the screen. What if Einstein and Newton were your roommates? I would kill to have those two people as roommates. What do you think, Krish?
I was sleeping and I got a dream. I was a speaker, like a music band, and I was seeing two persons sitting there. I think about it. Who are they? I not. This is Einstein and this is a Newton. They were discussing about anything. Newton says, "I know you." Einstein said, "I also know you." So Einstein told, "I am a great, I am a great about physics," and Newton said, "I'm a mathematics and I also physics, and I'm an astronaut also." Oh, nice to meet you. So Newton, how you have discovered many things. So Newton told, "First you tell." Einstein told, "First you tell." So this was a discussion, and Einstein told, "My the physics is very good. Then the Newton's mathematics and astronomy is also very good." So this made a very jammer on that and making a trouble that who is the best scientist. So I was giving a huge noise disturbance. So I on this speaker only. So their both voice can't be, and I slept again, and I came out of my dream, and oh, this dream cannot come again. Sorry.
Like there would be too much of ego in a single room if those two guys ever met. I'm just guessing, obviously. I'm not sure about that, but it's like so fascinating to think like what would happen if those two people ever got in the same room, right? Two of our greatest scientists. So that was a good answer, Krish. Thank you so much for participating in this. All right. Okay. So next up we have Niveta. Niveta, do we have you with us? Niveta, hi. If you can hear me, please turn on your mic and just say something so that we know that you're here with us.
Hi, sir. I'm here.
Hi, Niveta. Welcome. Let me just put your topic here.
Okay, sir. I will try.
So, okay. So here's your topic. I took up a new job and found out that a robot is my boss. Okay, that's a good one. I wonder what you have to say about this. Your time starts now, Niveta.
Sir, if I found a new job means I got a robot as my boss. I think the work pressure is so high. I think so. Then robot means we need to maintain the punctuality, no, sir. So robot means I want to maintain my punctuality. So I will try my best to give my efforts to maintain my job, and I will get promotion to the robot. From the robots, sir. That's all. Thank you.
That was a good angle, actually. So when I joined my first job, my boss was also very strict about punctuality. And I always used to wonder, is this guy a human or a robot? I'm sorry, that was just sort of an inside joke. Let's call up our next contestant. So next up, we've got Raja Bhupati. I hope I'm again pronouncing that name correctly. Raja, if you're here with us, please turn on your mic and say something. Raja, can you hear me? Guys, I think we don't have him with. Okay. Hi, Raj. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, Raj, I'll just put your topic up here. So this is it. Someone was controlling my brain using alpha waves. Raj, your 1 minute starts now. Can you hear me? Your mic is turned off. Unfortunately, we are working with some very strict time constraints, so we will have to move on. Let's see if Raj is able to join us in a short while. Okay, so after Raj, we have Manisha Patel. Manisha, are you here? Manisha, if you can hear me, please turn on your mic and say something. I think we've lost Manisha too. So next up, let's call Kamal Kumar on the stage. Kamal, are you with us?
Yes, sir. I'm with you.
Hi, Kamal. I'm so happy to see you here. I was so afraid that even you might have dropped out. So
no, sir. Sir, yeah, you don't didn't give permission to the all participant.
I understand. So we'll try to reconnect with the others as well if we miss somebody because of that connection issue, right? So meanwhile, I'm going to pull your topic here. Okay. So I am a monkey with electrodes going into my brain and somebody is running experiments on me. That is another very interesting one. So yeah,
इसमें मैं हिंदी बोलना चाहता हूँ सर. मैं क्या बोल सकता हूँ?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
मैं हिंदी में बोलना चाहता हूँ सर. मुझे पूरी मतलब पूरा
क्वेश्चन. हाँ जी, it's okay. आप प्लीज बोलिए हिंदी में. कोई इश्यूज नहीं है.
अभी क्या है सर, मैं 2075 में पहुंच चुका हूँ और मेरे जो दिमाग मतलब वो जो सिविलाइजेशन जो आ चुकी है वो बहुत ज्यादा एडवांस है, वो बहुत ज्यादा एक्सपेरिमेंट कर रही है. लेकिन क्या है कि मैं अकेला ऐसा इंसान बचा हूँ धरती पे जिसका दिमाग जो है अच्छे से काम कर रहा है. पर दिक्कत ये है कि वो मुझे इंसान ना मानकर अपनी एक्सपेरिमेंट्स जो मेडिसिन बनाई है उनकी मेडिसिन की वजह से मैं बंदर बन चुका हूँ. वो मुझे भी एक इंसान को भी, आई एम द लास्ट लिविंग ह्यूमन बीइंग, तो वो मुझे भी एक एआई में कन्वर्ट करना चाहते हैं और ये देखना चाहते हैं कि क्या मैं उस पूरी एआई के अंदर कन्वर्ट हो जाऊंगा, क्या मैं एक हाइब्रिड ह्यूमन बन जाऊंगा. एक रोबोटिक एज में मैं पहुंच चुका हूं और मुझे पूरी हैरानी हो रही है कि मैं क्या रहा है मेरे साथ में, मैं कहाँ पहुंच गया हूँ. मतलब बहुत ज्यादा एक शौक में हूं मैं और इतने में मेरी आंख खुलती है और मैं जाग जाता हूँ.
आप बच के कैसे निकलोगे? वहां से? इसका कोई प्लान?
सर एक्चुअली इट्स माय ड्रीम.
अच्छा, सपने में. हाँ, आई सी. ये सपने में हो रहा है.
रोबोट एज है और वहां पे सिर्फ रोबोट्स ही हैं. आई एम द लास्ट लिविंग ह्यूमन. मेरे ऊपर वो सारे एक्सपेरिमेंट हो रहे हैं. तो अब वो क्या कर रहे हैं कि मुझे एक हाइब्रिड ह्यूमन बनाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, एक एआई बनाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं ताकि वो अपनी जनरेशन को बनाने की पार्ट ना लगाए और मुझे ये पूरा ह्यूमन ताकि मैं समझ सकूं और फिर मैं इतने में उड़ जाता हूँ सर.
ये काफी विविड सपने आते हैं आपको. इसका मतलब पूरी प्रॉपर स्टोरी लाइन है सपने में.
आई एम लूसिड ड्रीमर सर. यू कांट इवन थिंक व्हाट आई एम थिंकिंग राइट नाउ.
वाकई में सपने कंट्रोल कर सकते हो क्या आप?
नहीं, कुछ हद तक सर. जैसे क्या होता है कि कई बार हम ये सोच लेते हैं ना कि हम रात को सोते वक्त अगर लास्ट के 5 मिनट में हम बहुत ज्यादा स्ट्रेस दें तो बहुत हद तक हम मतलब एटलीस्ट 20 to 25% तक हम कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं सर.
मैं
और
समझ
जहाँ
रहा
तक
हूँ।
इन सपनों की बात है, सपनों में बहुत सारे राज छुपे होते हैं सर। जैसे कि अभी मेरे मतलब कई बार मैं सोचता हूँ कि सर जो सपने नहीं लेते वो
I
शायद
understand.
इन्वेंशन कर पाए।
Personally, I find the concept of lucid dreams very interesting. I've never been able to do it, obviously, but I sometimes wonder if
Sir,
one could actually control.
you can read even Calculus, sir, who given the structure of benzene, even imagine that in the imagination in the मतलब उनको सपना ही आया था कि एक सांप अपने पूंछ को काट रहा है।
हाँ, मैंने सुना है कैक्यूल्स ड्रीम के बारे में कि सांप अपनी पूंछ को काट रहा है, so that's how he figured out, right?
सर ये बहुत। और मेंडलीफ का क्या था, मेंडलीफ ने जब पीरियोडिक टेबल जब डिजाइन की उनको भी सपना ही आया था। और जो अपने श्री जो
हाँ जी।
रामानुजन उनको भी सपने में आके उन्होंने कन्फेस
जी।
किया कि मैथमेटिक्स में है वो उन्होंने सपने में डिस्कवर किया सर।
So Kamal, I would thank you so much for joining and sharing your experience with lucid dreaming with us, and it was a good answer that you gave for the original topic. So thank you so much for participating. All right.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for giving me such a beautiful platform. And
Sure.
thank you, sir.
It's okay. So next up we have Shraddha. Shraddha, are you here with us?
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, Shraddha, you are perfectly audible. So let me just quickly pull up your topic. So yeah, I think we discussed your topic earlier. Just let me come back to it.
Black hole.
Yeah, so this is it. An asteroid is approaching. Hurry, we've got to evacuate the Earth. You are in charge. So what would you do in such a situation?
Yeah. Oh my God, there is a asteroid coming in front of me. I'm like clueless what to do. Like I'm preparing this momo and almost my Szechuan chutney is ready to be served with that. I need to eat first, and why people are running? Okay, let me take this with me as a parcel, and it's better if I sit on that asteroid only. Now in this lockdown, almost I will never, like I didn't go to any single place. With the help of asteroid, at least I'll move out of my home and I will have a galaxy ride. It would be so nice. Like there would be no charges also, and I would have this momos with me so that my stomach is also full, and I would be able to see the entire world through up. And in fact, everyone would be taking photos of me from down, because I think everyone is running, so I think I'm only the single person to stay in front of that asteroid. And it would be such a beautiful ride. Like no one would have set ever on asteroid and have a tour on it. I think I can get a Guinness world record on this also. So it would be the best journey.
I want to know, is it always that your imagination runs so wild in so many directions? Or
no, I don't know, but as soon as I saw this topic, this only came in my mind. And actually,
like,
I'm preparing.
I'm pretty sure you must be so fun to hang out with. If this is the stuff you can, like, this is the kind of stuff you can come up with on such short notice. Hats off to your imagination. Very well done.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So thank you so much, Shraddha, for participating. All right. Okay. So let's call up our next contestant. Next up, we have, just give me a moment, guys. Next up, we have Varsha. So Varsha, are you here with us?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Varsha. How are you doing?
Fine, sir. How about you?
I'm perfect. I'm like having the time of my life. People are giving such brilliant answers. And it's
thank you for giving me another chance for.
Yeah, that is perfectly okay. We like always intended to, but I think there was some connection problem earlier, but we were always planning on calling you back. All right.
Yeah.
So let me just quickly pull up your topic. So Varsha, here is the situation that you're dealing with. So in your world, the dinosaurs, they never went extinct. So right now they are here with us roaming around, and that is the world that you live in. So what do you have to say about that?
So I was sitting in the balcony and watching nature, and suddenly there, in a great distance, I saw a huge something which looked like a mountain, and I saw there wasn't any mountain before in that place. And so I was looking at it, and then I looked in with the help of the binoculars, and suddenly it started moving. So I started, what is there going to be an earthquake? And I rushed out of the house and I went there to see it. And in quite a distance, I saw that it looked like a dinosaur. And I started panicking, and what am I dreaming? And I pinched myself to check it, and I wasn't dreaming at all. So I saw, is this a movie? And I didn't know what to do.
Go on.
Um,
Are you going to make friends with the dinosaur?
no, sir. Actually, then I went close to it. I saw that it was actually a dinosaur, which like a toy, it inflated.
I see. See, maybe the dinosaurs just get a bad name. What if they were friendly? What if they were completely harmless and we just sort of like think about them as these monstrous creatures, right? What if they meant no harm? And if they were today, I sometimes wonder, like, what if they had been normalized into the society? They were a part of the society. What if dinosaurs were going to offices and everything, like wearing proper office formal attire and like be a general part, like living alongside the humans? That I think fascinates me a lot about, like, when I think about this question. But your answer, again, it was very good. You showed some very good imagination there.
Yes, sir. If it were friends, I would have asked to go on a ride on it.
So what, you would have ridden the dinosaur like a horse?
Yes.
Actually, now that you've said it, I'll scratch my previous answer about them going to offices and like being a part of the society. Even I want to ride a dinosaur like a horse. That would be so amazing, right? That was really cool, Varsha. It was such a great idea. All right. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So just let me check if we have got any more contestants with us. Guys, please give me a couple of seconds. All right. Okay, so after Varsha, we have got Manisha Patel. So we tried to connect with Manisha earlier, but I think there was some issue with her connection or something. We were not able to get in touch with her previously. So Manisha, do we have you with us now? Hi, Manisha. My team tells me that you are here with us. So if you could just turn on your mic and say something, that would be really great.
Hello.
Hi, is this Manisha?
Hello.
Hello, Manisha. You're perfectly audible to us. Can you hear me?
Some network problem issues. Hello.
Hello. Manisha, am I audible to you? Manisha, if I'm audible to you, please let me know. I think there is some trouble with the connection. Okay, so I think we've lost Manisha once again. Next up, we've got Snigdha. Snigdha, are you here with us? Okay, so we've got some people who had a connection problem earlier, so I'm going to call them out one by one and let's see if they have been able to rejoin us. After Snigdha, we have got Ranjani. Ranjani, do we have you with us?
Sir, yes, sir.
Hi, Ranjani. So I think you are, I'm so sorry, I think your proper name is Siva Ranjani, right?
Yes, sir. I am Shiva.
Yeah, so we had a bit of an incorrect spelling here. So Sivaranjani, first of all, welcome to the event. Are you excited to speak on your topic?
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. I'm very excited, sir.
All right. So let me just pull up your slide here. So Ranjani, if I'm not wrong, this is your topic, right? I am competing with a robot for a job. How do I win? Is that right?
Sir, I like robotic very much, sir. First of
Mhm.
all, I'm very excited to do my own creation robot. If I then completed my robotic, I prefer to participate in more contacts. Then I will get more experience by uh, joining and participate in that program, sir. Then I don't care about winning or losing it by introducing my own projects. I need what I experienced in that program by doing my experience, and I'm preparing what I thought like that. It's a what I can say. It is my thought. I'm going to uh, well developed, and I will do what I will do. I will do my best, sir. What I will prepare.
That's the
That's it,
spirit.
sir.
That's the spirit. I think
Thank
that
you,
was
sir.
pretty good. Thank you so much for joining, Sivaranjani. All
There
right.
is any mistake, please don't.
You're
Sorry,
taking
sir.
too much pressure. You should just relax. Like there's no pressure of that sort. All right. You spoke pretty well.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sivaranjani. You have a great day. All right. So after
Thank you so
Sivaranjani,
much, sir.
yeah. So after Sivaranjani, we are going to try to connect with. Uh, Let me just check. So do we have Snigdha with us? Snigdha, if
Yes, sir, I am present here. Hello.
yeah, Snigdha. So
Good
welcome
evening,
to the
sir.
competition.
Thank
Uh,
you, sir.
yeah. So Snigdha, your topic is I realize my best friend is actually a robot. Snigdha, what are you going to do in this situation if it turns out that your best friend is a robot? First of all, do you have one best friend or many best friends?
No, sir, I am lucky to have us one best friend, and we share
That
a
is, I
life
think,
together.
right. That I think is the luckiest thing one can aim for. But now I'm putting you in a very difficult situation there. What if this best friend of yours turns out to be a robot?
Okay, first, then I will just confront her, and I will tell what are your superpowers. I need to know right now, because I have this big dream of traveling the world and even the universe. So, what are your superpowers? And I'm going, and if she's is revealing that she can become bigger in size, she can fly as long as we want. Then together we are going on a world tour. I'm going to fly from mountains and mount to another mountains. Even I'm going to see the volcanoes from above the from skies, and then if possible we'll also have a universe tour. Thank you.
That was a pretty good answer. May I ask if your best friend is watching watching the stream right now because we are
No,
streaming live on
sir.
YouTube?
No, sir.
So
She's not
you
here with us.
you've got to show this person your like this particular video of you speaking, right? I think I've got a feeling that this person would appreciate your answer quite a lot.
Oh, that's thank you,
And
sir.
robot or not, you can go on the world tour as it is. Like even if
No, sir. I just want to fly with her. It's not that I want to go on a plane or I will go walk around, but I want to fly with her.
right, and that you can do only if like she's
She's
a
a
robot,
robot.
right? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. That makes so
Superpower.
much sense.
Exactly. Thank
All
you, sir.
right. All right, Snigdha. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you, sir, accepting me.
Okay. So Let's try to connect with Manisha once again. Manisha, this is the last call. If you are here with us and if your connection is working properly, we do want to give you this one last chance to connect. Are you here with us? Okay, so I think she is not coming back. We did our best possible effort to connect with everybody, and I think we were able to do justice to all of you guys. There were a few connection problems with a few people, but eventually we were able to get them on the chat. So that was our last contestant, and this was such a wonderful experience for me as well, like hosting this competition. And I hope you, as the audience, enjoyed as much as I did, like with this competition. And I hope all of those who are here with us, be it the audience, be it our contestants, I hope all of you had a lot of fun. And for everybody who stuck with us throughout the entire day, for all the different events that we had, not just the jam, but the events preceding it. So yeah, I'm sorry, I was a bit confused. Okay, Manisha, I know, giving up my closing note, but I've got a humble request from you guys. I think Manisha is with us. I can see her as the panelist, and I think it's only fair that we should give her one chance to speak for 60 seconds. So since she's our last contestant, Manisha, if you can hear me, please take your 60 seconds, but we've got to close after you. Manisha, am I audible?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Manisha. So please,
Hi.
because we are running out of time and I didn't want to rob you of this chance. So please take your 60 seconds and speak on your topic. Okay, so I'm so sorry. I don't think we were able to connect with her, and we have got to close because we are running out of time. So thank you so much, everybody, for sticking around throughout the day for all the different events. I hope all of you had fun. And this is me, your Jam Master Abhimanyu, signing off. Thank you so much, everybody, and you have a great day. All right, bye, guys.